Alrighty,
Yeah.
welcome to my either because I just got done recording as I'm recording this, which is January 7th, late in the what the hell? Early in the evening of January 7th, 2024. I just got done recording another podcast session with a NASCAR friend of mine who is a NASCAR fan. Now, this is the two podcast episodes in one day. This is the second one that I'm recording again in one day. So I don't know which one will come up first, but I'll figure it out. So this is either the first or second episode of the Turn 4 Sparks Controversy podcast. But regardless, welcome to another installment of the Turn 4 Sparks Controversy podcast, one of the first episodes of 2024. I'm on with who I had on the pilot episode, Dave Campos,
What's going on?
and Brandon. Met him at one of the
Hello.
championship races a couple of years ago. I have him on as well. Brandon, what's up? And Dave, what's up?
Uh, Not really too much. I mean, I drank 2 bottles of Gatorade, and right now, I kind of have to get that out. So, I have to go do that.
Do what you got to do. Dave?
Yeah, give me like 5 minutes.
Just occupying myself till the F1 season starts back up.
Dude, I'm doing the exact same thing. Recently, I've watched a couple of highlights from the 1983 season. I'm planning on watching the whole season of that, but as far as the highlights is concerned, because there's not much full races up on F1 TV. But I've also went back and watched, I don't know if you checked my Snapchat feed, Dave, but I sent you a snippet or a screenshot of a certain race from 2004. I went back and watched one of the races from that year, 20 years ago. It was one of the
I
races that Rubens Barrichello won 20 years ago.
ah,
Can you guess which race that I watched?
which one?
Chinese Grand Prix.
Ah,
That was a good race. I put it in B plus tier. It was Barrichello that won. Jenson Button that finished in second, and Kimi Räikkönen finishing third, rounding out the podium. And for once, Schumacher outside of the podium, let alone the points, finished 12th, one lap down. For once, considering 2004, he was unstoppable. That I even did a video covering up his 2004 season. But for today's we may or may not have another person on. That being who will be in the one of the documentaries that I did, which is finished but is set to be released on February 15th. We may or may not have Jessica Strauss on here on the pod as well, because I just had a text from her. Again, I'm not sure if she'll be on or not, but we'll see. For today's installment, you two, we'll be discussing and recapping, so to say, the 2023 Formula One season. I have
Max
my
won a lot.
computer. What, Brandon?
Max won a lot.
No. And Brandon, considering you're a Max Verstappen head, please tell me the winning got old.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't felt this much of a winning feeling since Tom Brady was on the New England Patriots, and every week it was just the same result. You know what I mean?
Every single week. Well, every single race weekend, so to say.
Maybe not every weekend, but
It was every race weekend, bro.
it was most of the year.
Basically, because you have Checo winning 2 races and Carlos Sainz winning in Singapore. Hold on, let me get racing reference up real quick so I can have every single race up. So, Dave, I know you watched because you notified me that you watched every race from this past year. Brandon, did you?
Yeah, I did as well. You know.
So the first stop, Bahrain. What do y'all remember from that race?
Well, I was actually in Lehigh Valley for the TKC race that was taking place at the same time for some reason. Thanks, Mateo. No, I'm kidding. I love Mateo. But, you know, of course, Red Bull ran away with it. But the huge shocker and the elephant in the room all season long, I'll actually say it, the elephant in the room was definitely Fernando Alonso dragging that Aston Martin.
Even with testing, even though that's, that's usually, we don't judge anything from that, but we had no idea that Aston Martin was going to be that good, especially right out of the gate with Alonso. But they also surprising, and we were all doubting that Stroll was actually going to participate since he had the accident before the race weekend.
What happened to Lance Stroll again?
Yeah. He had that biking incident. But the thing is about Lance Stroll in 2023, we're going to look at this from a non-biased perspective. Lance Stroll was inconsistent as hell. Like, one race weekend, he was doing really well. He was trailing Alonso by only a couple seconds. And then the next, he couldn't figure out his ass from his head.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, well, especially the first race in Bahrain, he kind of broke. Well, supposedly he broke both his wrists, which that's a lot of strength for even F1 cars.
He broke both of his wrists, and yet he was still able to go wheel to wheel with the Mercedes cars.
Well, since I guess he had the best surgeons to at least get him some, 80% healed.
You said, Brandon, you said he was able to put up a fight, Lance Stroll, with the Mercedes cars.
Oh, yeah. I mean, if you rewatch that race, he has broken wrists, but yet he was somehow able to keep up with the Mercedes cars.
And finished in the Mercedes sandwich. Finished behind Lewis, ahead of Russell in 6th place. Hamilton 5th, Russell 7th.
Yeah.
Albeit almost a minute behind, but still.
Even though Lance Stroll had that little contact with Alonso.
Wait, really?
Yeah,
Oh, I remember now.
Alonso said, "Who hit me?" I don't think his engineers wanted to say it was his teammate.
Which it was.
I will say this though about Alonso. It seems like Alonso enjoys having Lance Stroll as company more than he did Ocon's.
I mean, can we be real and agree on that? I mean, Alonso even complimented Lance Stroll at the Miami Grand Prix when he saw Lance Stroll making a move on one of the big screens as he was racing.
But that's also another thing. It's Alonso that he can multitask, overtaking while also watching the big screen.
Get this. This dude is the oldest driver on the grid and is doing this.
Alonso still thinks he's in his 20s.
He is completely different. He doesn't show any signs of slowing down like most other drivers at that age, and it's pretty impressive.
Because he's what, in his 40s now?
Well, he's like 41. He's 41.
He's in his early 40s. Yet he still got it.
He's driving like he's.
Wait a minute, Brandon. Did you tell me? Did you tell? Because Dave, I think you were on when we had Alec on after the Abu Dhabi 2021 fiasco. Brandon, didn't you say one of your predictions for 2022 that Fernando would win at least one more race or at some point in his career before he hangs it up for good?
Yeah, I think I'm still comfortable with sticking with that prediction. I mean, whether it's 2024, 2025, 2026, or even 2030 if he doesn't want to retire, but he'll definitely get one more win before he retires, because now that he's at an actual team that wants to have a chance at winning, and Alpine was probably the team that was fighting nobody, because in 2022, there was either lower field teams, upper field teams, and then Alpine was the only one in the midfield.
Alpine ain't by no one but themselves in 2022.
Pretty much.
You remember Hungary? The Hungaroring?
You mean Hungary, not Hungry. I'm sorry. Yeah, in 2021, I mean, watching that race and I remember it was that battle between Sebastian Vettel versus Ocon the whole way through.
I remember.
The one thing I mainly remember about that race was Sebastian Vettel getting disqualified afterwards.
Man, we all thought he was going to get that second podium for Aston. Can we be real that he did, despite the disqualification? I may be a bit
Imagine
when I say
the
that,
fallout. Imagine the fallout if he won the race and he got disqualified like right after that. Imagine the fallout.
That would be a huge blow had he won.
Oh yeah.
Isn't it funny that whoever the teammates with Lance Stroll, they managed to get podiums. Stroll hasn't managed to get a podium with this team yet.
You're saying this happened all about Lance's career?
Well, the only podium he had was Williams, and that was 2017.
He also had those podiums in 2020.
Yes.
When he was with Racing Point.
Monza
he
and
second
Bahrain
by a fraction of a second with Bottas.
Hey, don't forget
what's that?
Say again, Dave. What you just said?
That Lance Stroll, he missed second place by a fraction of a second with Bottas in Azerbaijan.
Yep.
Don't forget what I was going to add. Going back to 2020, that year, Lance Stroll did have a couple podiums because the Racing Point car was actually good that year. But
some say that it's a carbon copy of the Mercedes W10.
Arguably, though, Lance Stroll, to his credit, he was actually close to winning the 2020 Italian Grand Prix had he not lock up and go off, Lance being Lance. But leave it to Lance Stroll to mess that up.
But he still finished on the podium, though.
Yeah, to his credit, he still got on the podium, but let's be real. The Racing Point against the AlphaTauri, if he didn't miss that corner, imagine the Canadian national anthem playing at Monza.
And let alone for the first time since 1997.
Another thing I wanted to bring up, too, about Lance pretty recently, too, in the last couple days, there was that whole situation with Bianca.
With who?
I think you know what I'm referring to. Bianca, she's McLaren's F1 Academy driver.
Oh, yeah.
So
yeah, that little debacle that
so to give a brief rundown, on Twitter she liked a meme of Lance Stroll, and the meme was calling Lance Stroll autistic, and the fans really didn't appreciate that. A lot of people felt hurt by it, but
but then she quickly came out with a statement that she
was wrong to do that.
She didn't mean to, and then she said, I guess her brother or some kind of relative also is autistic, so she wouldn't exactly do that. But I mean, I kind of do that sometimes. Well, sometimes by accident. If you're like scrolling.
Yeah,
sometimes accidentally, but it was. She probably didn't realize till.
I understand why people can be angry about it. At the same time, too, I think if you're at that level of motorsport, you got to be careful about what you do on social media. Even in TKC, I'm not going to point any fingers, but I have seen a couple drivers dark humor memes. I'm going to leave it at that. But yeah.
How dark are we talking about?
Pretty dark. I don't think I could say on Spotify exactly what the videos were, but
I recommend you don't do that.
Yeah, I'm just gonna leave it at that. But
that's fine. Yeah, just I don't know how dark it is, but
on the bright side, though, let's take out Red Bull out of the equation. Who do we think are the cars to watch in 2024?
I would definitely say McLaren's. I mean, if they go how they were towards the end, they look like they are the strongest competitor.
Yeah, like the weird thing about McLaren, especially in these last couple years, is they show up to Bahrain with a complete tractor, but then they slowly pick up progress over the year. Like the turning point, the huge turning point was definitely Silverstone.
I'm pretty sure. I mean, the big improvement was, I believe, it was Austria.
Oh yeah,
That's when, yeah, that was their first upgrade. I think that was just on Norris.
which brings me on to what I was also going to mention. A lot of people talk about Aston Martin having that promising start at the beginning of the year, and then here we are, January 2024. They fell down to like 5th. Then again, though, I think Aston Martin just didn't expect teams like Ferrari and Mercedes and McLaren to chuck in all those upgrades.
But
well, we all know that for Aston Martin, Alonso was pretty much carrying that team.
Which he was
without
and did most of the work. Dave, you mentioned it in the pilot podcast we did.
Well, I mean, you can clearly see the standings that Alonso has like 200 more points than Lance.
Yeah, which is what I talked about earlier, how inconsistent Lance Stroll has been.
And
I mean, he would.
Alonso did most of the work.
I believe it was Miami that Alonso tried to give Lance a setup, and it completely did not work.
Well,
I think it went the opposite.
Lance's case.
Yeah.
The Bahrain Grand Prix from this year, the podium finishers, Max, who won the pole, Checo, who started on the second and finished the second, Fernando Alonso, third, rounding out the podium.
Yeah, like the first half of the year was literally just
those three
Max,
on the podium.
Checo, and Alonso. I mean, there was in the middle of everything, there was Charles Leclerc getting third in Azerbaijan, but 2024, predicting it early, I think it's going to be another good year for Red Bull, of course. But keep in mind, too, they didn't use that extra aero time tunnel that they got a while back. So
wait, because they didn't need to.
I was about to say, Dave, didn't you mention in the pilot podcast that they didn't need that much wind tunnel testing because of how dominant they are?
No.
I mean, keep in mind, too, they have Adrian Newey on their team, and Adrian Newey wrote an entire book back in like the 1990s about aerodynamics too. So he
even posted out a book
rather
recently on how to build a race car, which I'm currently reading. That really good book, by the way.
Yeah, and remember when we saw the underside of the Red Bull compared to the Williams when they pulled it up too, which is also what I wanted to bring up too. Rookies. We have to rank the rookies.
From this year?
Yeah.
Well, one of the rookies from the Bahrain Grand Prix, Oscar Piastri.
Oscar Piastri, he's definitely going to have...
He finished dead last because of an electrical problem.
Yeah, he's definitely going to have... Like, if we look at the bigger picture, Oscar Piastri's definitely going to have future success. He'll definitely have some of that. But there's also Logan Sargent. Like, we can agree that Oscar Piastri has had one of the...
In the Bahrain Grand Prix.
Like, Oscar Piastri has had one of the best rookie seasons we've seen since Lewis Hamilton in 2007. As for Logan Sargent, I mean, I think he's going to take time to improve. But that's just me.
Well, he's in the Williams, so
I think
it's going to be a struggle for him.
He's a rookie. He's a rookie in a Williams car. I didn't really have that much expectations. I mean, it was nice to see him get points in his home race, of course. But yeah.
I mean, Calvin, I think I told you this a while ago that I also didn't have high expectations for Logan Sargent, just because not only because he's a rookie, but he was in the Williams, and how the years went on, that Williams was always towards the back, so I didn't really have, high expectations for him, but he would maybe have a couple decent races and not, not get any trouble with any other drivers. But I think he's the one with the most damaged if I remember. I think he has the most damage out of
Yeah.
all the drivers.
Somehow he was able to keep his seat next year despite the countless mistakes he's made. I think what saved his seat was Vegas in qualifying and when he scored a point in Texas. But to your point, Dave,
Yeah.
I think you did mention to me in the Instagram DMs. To your point, I think he was the one that did the most damage.
He was actually. He did $6 million in damage. The only one that comes close, I think, is Hamilton, but that's about it.
God damn. It was I bet if anyone remembers, was that compared to Mick Schumacher when he was in Haas? Because I think
2022.
he had a little bit more.
In 2022.
Yeah,
I remember
but-
his
Or at
Monaco
least
crash
both of
and a Saudi crash too. Those two crashes in
Hey,
particular
hey.
did it in for him.
Most importantly, you guys are both Mercedes fans, so how are you guys rating the season?
It's a struggle. In my opinion, it's a struggle. But this car that we've had for the last 2 years now, we're still learning the process, but we're slowly but surely getting there. I'm not sure when that'll happen as far as back to winning ways is concerned, but eventually, when they hit those marks and when they find those holes in the wall, they fix it up, we're back in contention again. But again, I don't know when or where, but we're getting there. At least in my humble opinion.
Well, at least they got a handle on the porpoising, because that was the main problem.
Especially in
the first season.
2022.
Well, especially in Azerbaijan, if you saw
Hamilton had his back problem because of it.
Hamilton, that was with Hamilton. That even hurt me looking at it.
It did?
There was
But-
turn 1 in Qatar. That was interesting.
From this year.
Yeah, but at least Azerbaijan, that was really tough, because
Yeah.
even Hamilton, I think he had a decent result. You can see him; he was struggling to even get out of the car because his back was hurting
That bad.
I
with
mean,
that
Dave,
long straight.
Do you
Yeah, it
remember?
was.
Do you remember
that
shortly
entire
after the race? Shortly after the race, we had a discussion, either in person or in DMs, that Hamilton might be replaced for the Canadian Grand Prix because of how bad his back was hurting.
I think I do recall.
We've had that discussion
Hearing about that,
in the
or
moment.
someone just like stepping in. Probably one of the reserve drivers at the time, just because. But I think I think he was fine for the next race. So I think didn't need to do that.
Bahrain Grand Prix from this year, you had only 2 drivers that led, Verstappen and Checo. The Red Bulls, they just you knew right from the off
Well,
that
league of
they
their own at
already
this
got
point.
they got us locked up. And
Well, except for
Guan Yu with the fastest lap. Next up is Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, won by Checo. Checo on the podium with the win after starting from pole. Max Verstappen, his teammate, finishes second and did not lead a single lap. And in third, Fernando Alonso after leading 3 laps. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. This was the race that Fernando got his century of podiums. In other words, hit that 100.
I believe it was.
Yeah, it was Saudi Arabia, but the first couple races, hate to say it, but there really isn't much reviewing to do, because unfortunately, for like most of the year, it felt like I would wake up and then, oh boy, I get to hear the Dutch national anthem in about 2 hours. But outside of that, next weekend actually, we have something that'll hold us off, and at the end of the month, we have another thing that'll hold us off outside of F1. There's the Mexican E-Prix and the 24 Hours of Daytona that definitely can't wait to watch. Jensen Button's actually going to be in the 24 Hours of Daytona.
2009 world champion.
So Jensen Button and Colton Herta are going to be on the same team, so that's definitely going to be a force to be reckoned with.
Now, let me ask you a question. A little bit off track here. We're going to F1, but with IndyCar now. Brandon, this is a question for you. Is Colton Herta overrated?
Not really. I mean, he's probably he's not only the highest paid driver on the grid with a salary of $8 million per season, but Yeah, he's the highest paid driver in the grid, but arguably Colton Herta is pretty soon going to be the fan favorite. And for a second, I thought you were going to ask me. I thought you were going to ask me, is he F1 worthy? And I was gonna scream out, hell yes, he is F1 worthy. I mean,
I was about
in
to ask that
his
question.
days,
Funny enough.
in his days of junior formula, he's been against drivers that have eventually made it to F1, and in his junior formula days in the same equipment, he would end up beating them. So yeah, I think he's definitely worthy. Arguably, here's a hot take, or actually, here's a question. I'm going to turn this into a question.
All right.
If we made a completely separate team and we put Sargent and Herta in, let's pretend there's an 11th team and we put Sargent and Herta in. Who's performing better at the end of the year? Let's say it's like a midfield powered team too.
Now, are they going to be in the same machinery or?
Same machinery. Let's say it's like a midfield team too, like Alpine level.
Okay, well, I'm not familiar of. Well, I know Colton Herta. I just not familiar watching them. So, even the season I've seen so far with Sargent, I will probably still say Herta because
Yeah, Dave. Colton Herta is in this racing series called IndyCar, and it has this thing called different race winners every weekend. Sorry.
Max was
because
go ahead, Dave.
If you remember that Colton Herta was, I guess, approached by Red Bull to try to get him into a seat, but of course,
Herta actually has ties to McLaren too. I mean, in July of 2022, he went out to Portugal to test out a F1 car. If you go back into his Instagram post, I could probably send it to you guys if you want to see it later, but he got to do some laps in a McLaren.
Yeah, I do remember seeing that.
And
but of course,
but it wasn't in Portugal. It was in Abu Dhabi.
Of course, Colton Herta, he didn't have enough super license points, or he didn't have enough points because I think IndyCar wasn't really
FIA
in the category. Yeah.
Exactly, because not in the FIA.
So he didn't have enough. Yeah.
Saudi Arabia,
I think
Max Verstappen, to no surprise, gets the fastest lap after finishing run up to his teammate Checo. Dave, what were you saying?
Oh no, I was done talking.
Oh, okay. Australia. Can we talk about that? Can we talk about that fiasco that happened at the end, please?
I stayed up until 3 o'clock in the morning just to watch that happen. Yeah.
Wait, did you have to go to school in the morning too?
Oh,
you didn't?
Because it was, well, for us it was Saturday, but it was Saturday going into Sunday. It was the same thing for Las Vegas Grand Prix, where it started Saturday night my time at like 11 or 12 o'clock, and then the race ended around like, same for Japan too, if you want to add them in. But also, unfortunately, I've had something come up, so I really hate to cut this short, guys. But yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay. We'll keep it going.
All right. Have a good one.
You too. Right, with just me and Dave now on the podcast for the remainder of this recording session. Back to what I was saying. Can we discuss that fiasco that happened at the finish?
I don't know where to start. I mean, that's like you really don't see accidents after the turn one. Usually it's at turn one, but after turn one into two, that that I don't even know what to say, because it didn't even happen once. It happened like a couple times.
2 or 3 times.
Yeah, I mean, they had to restart it. They had to restart, and it was just unbelievable. Nice. Especially between the two Alpines. I mean, that was
a huge blow for the team. That was a big
blow. Yes. And also, it was funny after that race that Alonso managed to keep his podium because they didn't. So they didn't, I guess, cross the first sector or whatever what they have stewards at FIA deemed to go off of. So they had to revert to what it was when they started, and Alonso managed to keep that third place. And what was it? After a race, I think someone tweeted that that they need Alonso to be their lawyer since he he was he managed to get that podium place
despite spinning off and after getting hit by Carlos Sainz.
Yeah, that's just a little funny to
Crazy.
get hit by a fellow.
No, not even
fellow
chaotic. That's the better way of putting it.
Well, that's one way. I mean, yes. I mean, I've never really seen that many restarts for the Australian Grand Prix.
Until now. Well, until last year. Which again was chaotic.
Well, yeah, but
do you remember when Carlos Sainz, before the last attempt, Carlos Sainz was begging his race engineer, I think his name was Ricky, was begging him to go back, and he was basically protesting and saying that wanted to keep it, why the stewards gave him, I think it was a time penalty, and thought,
I believe it was because of causing a collision.
Yes,
he did in fact spin out Alonso, but at least Alonso didn't impact the barriers too bad, so he managed to
keep going,
continue, and then they restarted again,
and the race ended.
It was
with Max Verstappen winning. Hamilton got second place, Fernando with third again, despite getting hit by Carlos Sainz.
Well, also that weekend wasn't, I guess, start one of the declines for Checo, because that was not his best weekend. That was like one of his worst.
He started 20th on the grid.
Yeah, well, I think he had also a penalty too
for changing something in the component, the gearbox. What?
I think they changed it before that weekend or some.
Hence the grid.
And
penalty.
Then, but also he was already out in Q1, I believe, anyway. So
it really
and then with penalty, yeah, it was not the best for Checo, and I believe that was probably kind of the start of his decline. Well, I mean, I think that was the start of his bad weekends.
Yet he finished 5th despite that.
Yeah, of course, a lot of people thought he should have finished higher since he was in the fastest car. And well, I mean, I can understand that you're from the grid, and you gotta rely mostly on the strategy and also how much to push on the tires. If you're you're going on a longer stint, or maybe if you're going to change, depending on the tires.
If you're going on a longer stint, you go for the harder compound or the medium compound if they're not worn out.
Depends on their strategy and depending on the track. We do know that the season before this season, with if you remember, Hungary and Ferrari.
Are you talking about 2022?
Yes.
When they shot themselves in the foot, putting both Ferraris on the wrong compound. As a wrong compound, as the slowest compound.
Well, especially Leclerc. I don't know what Ferrari was thinking, putting Leclerc on hards, because I think they had data from like other teams, which I think that was completely dumb. The hard tire did not perform as well at Hungary, and the medium was pretty much the ideal tire.
Tired to go.
And also, Max, he was down in 10th, so this should have been, like a solid win for Leclerc and or Ferrari, but no.
And this was 2022, yes.
Yes,
You Max spun
because
and still won regardless. Not even just
I mean,
for
and that
Hamilton
was,
too.
and of course, I didn't really see it, but I saw online that during the cool down lap, Max and whoever was on the podium, they were pretty much laughing at Ferrari and their strategy.
I can't blame them. I really can't.
Well, I mean that was pretty much like that pretty much made Ferrari a laughing stock at that race. That was just completely embarrassing.
I mean, they've been in laughing stock for how many years now?
Well, 2020 wasn't their best, so
2020 was 2020 was a whole nother can of worms for Ferrari. I can tell you that much. We all thought they were going to be. Well, I thought they were going to be up there with Mercedes. Yeah, that was a complete opposite. The complete opposite. The complete 180. Which in this race, the Australian Grand Prix, Sainz finished 12th because again he had that penalty for causing a collision after hitting Alonso. His teammate Charles Leclerc crashed out on the opening lap.
Right.
He got hit from
And
somebody.
that was just
Either that or he lost it on the opening lap.
I think he no, I think he had like a problem with it, so he was already out, I believe.
When regarding Charles Leclerc when he spun off and crashed.
Yes. And that was just unbelievable. I mean, it's not like the first things. I mean, we've seen that plenty of times of drivers losing it on the formation lap. Like I think it was 21. I think when they were in Brazil and Max, it was raining, I believe, and he just happened to hydroplane right into the barriers.
Hungary 2020.
Oh, was it? I thought it was Brazil.
Hungary 2020 that happened. Oh, Jessica's on.
So how's it going?
We're doing well. We're still recording.
Yes. But you all know that Oscar Piastri would be Rookie of the Year. Hands down.
He already is.
Oh, yeah, no doubt.
Which, speaking of,
I think
He already is Rookie of the Year. And there's no rookie for next year. So what's the point?
well, we might as well just put NA for 2024 because, again, there's no rookies in 2024 for this year. And speaking of, the Australian finished 8th in his home race in his third Formula One Grand Prix. His first points
That's crazy.
won. His teammate Lando Norris finished 6th. And who, as far as who got the fastest lap, as far as that is concerned, that honor goes to Checo Perez, who finished, again, like I mentioned earlier, finishes 5th after starting dead last.
But like, imagine
Right?
if like we had like the NASCAR disqualification rule and Verstappen gets disqualified a couple times.
Well, I'm not familiar how the
NASCAR
layout.
side works.
Yeah.
Where times do you think Verstappen could have been disqualified?
It's hard to tell. Difficult to judge.
It's hard to tell.
I would say
trying
the
to recall.
same thing.
They
hard
say
to
that
tell,
Max
trying to
Verstappen
recall.
was cheating this whole time, which I've heard from a friend of mine who
He won so many times. It's not even funny.
goes go-karting on some occasions.
Crazy.
It's not the team or the drivers. It's just him. And only him doing the work.
Yes.
And by the way,
Okay.
Jessica,
Woo!
recording the background noise, if you're not speaking, can you mute so we don't catch that background
Yeah.
noise? Next race after Australia came the Azerbaijan Grand Prix in Baku, won by Checo Perez. His teammate Max Verstappen finished second. Charles Leclerc, who won the pole, rounds out the podium in P3, third place. But again, like in Bahrain, 1-2 finish for Red Bull. and Saudi for that matter. But like Saudi, Checo comes out on top after leading for 42 laps.
It's freaking really weird to see. It's weird to see, like, it's like a lot of people hate the same drivers winning over and over and over again.
But at this stage, race 4 of 22, Max has won 2 races up to that point. Bahrain, Australia.
That's
At this
crazy.
stage, Max with 2, Checo with 2. Checo in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix led for 42 laps. Max Verstappen led for 7, and Charles Leclerc led for 2 laps. The only 3 drivers that led in the Azerbaijan Grand Prix. George Russell from Mercedes with the fastest lap of the race.
I have to leave the thing because the awards are coming up.
Alrighty, we'll still be on though.
And I'll see y'all later.
Alrighty. Back to being you and me. Did you hear what I said moments ago?
I'm not too sure. I think her background was over you, so if you can repeat.
That's why I told her to mute so we don't catch that background noise. Now,
Right.
it was about Jean. We had, in
Mhm.
case you didn't hear, and in case the listeners didn't hear, we have Checo getting his 2nd win of the season. So at this stage, it's 2 for 2. Max with 2 wins, Bahrain, Australia, Checo with 2 wins. Again, at this stage, Saudi, Baku. So it's a Red Bull 1-2 finish. Checo with the win, Max Verstappen P2. Charles Leclerc for Ferrari, who won the pole, finishes 3rd, rounding out the podium. Fernando just missing out, finishing 4th. Carlos Sainz rounding out the top 5. Checo led for 42 laps.
And
Max led for 7 laps, and Charles Leclerc led for 2 laps. The only 3 to lead. And George Russell got the fastest lap.
even though George, he was managed to finish in 8th.
Yes. After starting 11th on the
And
grid. So he didn't make that much gains,
and
but he still finished in the points.
right, and also this was the first race that Alonso did not be on the podium.
Yes.
He just missed out.
The first, because he finished, he just missed out, even though they were 22 seconds behind the Red Bulls. It was a close one between him and Leclerc, but he couldn't capitalize and make the move on Leclerc because Leclerc kept the Spaniard at bay.
Right.
Again, Russell, despite getting 8th, he gets the fastest lap. 2 drivers that did not finish this race is Nick de Vries, who we'll get to in a little bit later, and Zhou Guanyu. Those are the 2 that did not finish. So starting from round 5, we have the Miami Grand Prix. Again, 1-2 finish for Red Bull. Max Verstappen wins and gets the fastest lap after starting 9th. Checo, who won the pole, finishes 2nd, and Fernando Alonso with 3rd place. And the Red Bulls were the only drivers that led. Logan Sargent, in his home race, finishes dead last after starting in dead last.
And he was a lap down too.
Yes, along with Oscar Piastri. Nick de Vries barely held on to the lead lap by a thread. Again, we'll get to Nick de Vries later.
And also, I think this is probably where Red Bull started to focus more on Max, because I think they undercut Perez for Max to win.
In Miami?
Yes. Because Perez was on his way to win, but then he was on older tires anyway. And
how many laps old was Checo's tires?
That I do not know, but I want to say probably in the region of probably like 30, 35 laps, I want to say. I could be wrong, but it could be maybe a little fresher than that. I can't really recall, but I do recall that Perez was leading. Red Bull undercut Perez. Max, of course, took him, and then Perez was confused, like what was going on, because they didn't tell him that this was going to happen.
Yet it did.
And I think that was at one point that Perez was kind of doubting his team because they were not really communicating with him. Well, I guess favoring Max again.
And that would be a trend as the season progressed. Next on the calendar is Monaco. Max, it was pretty much Max. It was just pretty much all him. Won the race by 28 seconds over Fernando Alonso, finishes second. And Esteban Ocon finished third. They started 1, 2, 3, and they finished 1, 2, 3. Max led every single lap, but did not get the fastest lap. That honor went to Lewis Hamilton, who finished fourth.
Well, before Monaco, it was actually supposed to be Imola, but I believe it was flooded.
But
so
Imola had a huge storm on the way. They had to cancel.
Yeah, and it was flooded, so they had to cancel it.
Which they did. Props to F1 and the FIA for doing that.
For those who don't remember that, yeah, it was supposed to be they call it the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix. We still call it Imola.
For some old school folks like myself, the San Marino Grand Prix.
I would say that too, but you know, it's still an Imola. But yeah, it was that was the race supposed to be after Miami, but due to the flooding, they had to cancel. It wasn't safe, so they had to go to Monaco.
And again, props to F1 and the FIA for making that move. Props to them.
Right, and yes, because that was it was not suitable for not only for F1, for anyone,
but for the fans too.
Well, at least F1 and the FIA kind of, I guess. Well, this doesn't really compare to Belgium, because you know I call it the F1 parade. It was not it wasn't a race, even though in the rule book it considered a race.
When it really
they
wasn't
only
a race.
It wasn't a race. It was a parade because they were just behind the safety car.
Exactly.
But they had to be in the safety car for a number of laps to consider to be a race, and then they awarded half points.
Which they consider the 2021 Belgian Grand Prix a race.
No, not even, because I would consider it a race if they actually got going, with no safety car.
Exactly.
But of course, even though with qualifying with that scary crash with Norris,
yes, it was Lando Norris going up the but it was ready portion. And was it Vettel? When he got up there, he wanted to make sure he was okay, and of course he was. And Vettel
and he knew that
they should red flag the session, which of course it would take Lando's crash to red flag the session.
Yes, and they should listen, since they're the drivers, and even a multiple world champion says a red flag. I think you should listen and red flag, even though it's not safe, especially with at Belgium. That's a very high speed, especially for dry conditions. That's even tricky.
Exactly.
Going up, because the compression once you get ready on.
Exactly.
Because
apex going through a uphill, you best hold on.
We've seen plenty of times that once you hit it, if you happen to hit the curb, that the rear end will
snap out.
Get upset, and you'll just spin out. And for people that don't know that that tragedy that happened, I think was that around 2020, or
if you're with Antoine Hubert in Formula 2, that was August 2019. Late August
2019. Right. I mean, because that was Formula 2, so you know they don't go as fast, but they do go pretty fast. But that just to show that that part of the track is usually notorious for those type of crashes.
Mm-hmm.
But this is why, you know, the FIA is really strict on the safety of the cars for side impact and front. But you know, even with those safety measures, it wasn't able to save Hubert, which is very tragic and
unfortunate. And
you know,
you've seen the footage, have you?
I have seen it, and
Same.
it's just it gives you chills. It's almost, I wouldn't say it's not as bad like if you saw the video of Jules Bianchi, because that was even horrific to actually see that footage.
Mm-hmm. Regarding Gio Bianchi at Japan 2014. A decade ago
Yes.
now, that crash happened. A full-on decade ago. You were watching that race live,
Mhm.
were you?
I was, because and also I also thought they should have like red flag or probably like suspended the Grand Prix, because there was a typhoon warning
what?
in Japan. A typhoon, but there was a warning, and then they still went with the race. It wasn't visible, and you know, this tragedy happened.
And several months later, he passed from his injuries.
But once they broke the news at the Hungarian Grand Prix, and of course, all the drivers stood in silence.
You may have noticed that when it takes wrecks like that one, it's bone chilling, so to say. That's the best.
And of
That's
course,
the best way I can describe it,
uh,
especially with these type of situations.
and of course, with Jules Bianchi passing, he would be the first driver to pass after Senna.
20 years apart.
Yes.
The last two deaths in F1, those two, Jules Bianchi 2014, 2015. I say 15 because that's the year he passed.
Yeah.
Fortunately,
Right.
and 90, as Dave, I'm sure you obviously know, May 1st, 94, 30 years ago, Senna crashed and didn't survive his injuries.
Yep.
And was the king of Monaco, and still is the king of Monaco, considering he's still the winningest driver there.
I still think that Senna should have had those 2 more wins to his Monaco wins. He should have 8 instead of 6.
So you're
Of
saying,
course,
so you're saying 1988 was one of them.
well, if he didn't crash, of course, because he was on track. But you know,
What is another
he
one?
was his
84.
his first
84.
race, 84, Pullman, and it was raining,
In the
and he
box
was like, was it? I think was he a second lap or 2 seconds quicker than Prost?
Yes, he
But
was.
he was.
Yes, he was.
He was charging, and that's why I like the rain. That you know, even you don't have the best car, that still puts all the cars at a pretty much a level playing field, because you'll have drivers that are not that good in the rain,
Or their car is not up to par in the wet, and they'll give the slow cars and the
Well,
midfield cars an advantage.
right. or they didn't set it up right for the rain.
Which did it rain in the Monaco Grand Prix in 2023?
Yeah, it was wet, but I don't think it was raining as hard. I know they had the interns on, but I don't think. Well, no, I do remember that. I do remember Alonso. I think he was one of two drivers that was on the full wets, and that was a bad choice because he had to go to the pits again, and I think he lost. That's why he lost. And then he was he finished second, but I think that kind of took away his potential win.
So
at
you're
Monaco,
saying he had a
because
chance to win Monaco in 2023?
Yes,
Well, we all thought he was going to get the pole because you watched qualifying, did you?
of course. Yeah, because he
We
had
all
it,
thought he was going to get
and
the damn pole when he was
but
factored
somehow,
on the timesheets.
but somehow Max found that extra time. We don't even know how.
Maybe it's the work of the racing gods giving them that extra boost.
I don't know, but it would have been nice to see Alonso on pole. Well, of course, we'll see how 24 plays out.
We haven't seen Fernando on pole
And
since 2012.
well, I mean, of course, he was in a number of bad cars. Since
the
he
F120.
went back to McLaren, that was one of his
worst decisions, considering how much McLaren went down the
well,
drain, especially in 2015.
I mean, Alonso is pretty known for going to the wrong team at the wrong time.
McLaren specifically in 2015, 16, and 17, when they were still not that good. 16, they picked it up a little bit, and then 2017, they went right back down to earth. And then 18, they somewhat picked it up, but they still went back down to earth.
Yeah.
And then took a 2-year sabbatical and came back in 2021. And now he's back better than ever. And at this stage, he's got a couple podiums. And Monaco, again, finishes second at the starting in second and finishes 28 seconds behind Verstappen. And again, Lewis Hamilton finishes fourth, gets the fastest lap on her.
And also Ocon also got the podium for third place.
Yes, but third place in the Alpine. Next up is the Spanish Grand Prix. Did you watch that live?
Of course he did.
Did you doze off at one point, considering how much Max whipped the floor with everybody?
Well, I don't recall if I dozed off at this race. I mean, there were a handful of times I have dozed off because, nothing really goes on during, after the start. Everything pretty much kind of stays the same. You probably see a couple of overtakes, but nothing really exciting happens.
Basically, nothing happens. Nothing interesting happens, is what you're saying.
Right.
You know what? Name one moment that happened in the Spanish Grand Prix from this past season.
Trying to remember.
I can tell.
I mean, of course, Max won. Well, I do remember. Wasn't I think that was part of qualifying that the two Mercedes almost collided, or they kind of touched a little.
I do remember that happened. It was in the race, though. That happened in Japan.
Was it the race? I thought it was in the. I think it was I thought it was qualifying.
I remember it happened in the race, but in Japan. I forgot that it happened in qualifying for the Spanish Grand Prix.
Yeah, because I remember. I think I think George was on the slow lap, and I think Hamilton was on the fast lap. But George didn't. I think he was playing chicken, or he didn't leave him enough room, so Hamilton had to go more on the outside of the track. I think he almost won onto the grass, or he kind of taps a little. But I think they kind of touched just a little, if I remember.
I think they did in the Spanish Grand Prix, either in qualifying or the race itself.
I think it was qualifying because I believe that of course, well, almost if anything kind of happens, social media is all on top of that,
You already know,
Well-
especially nowadays.
yeah.
And considering, speaking
Yeah.
of the two Mercedes drivers, they finished second and third, respectively, at the end of the Spanish Grand Prix, with Hamilton getting the better of Russell. In other words, Hamilton second, Russell third. Max was on a class of his own, finishing 24 seconds ahead of second place Hamilton. Pole position, fastest lap, led every single lap, and gets the race win. Pretty much doing the Grand Slam. And gets that extra point for the fastest lap. Since 2019, whoever gets the fastest lap and finishes in the points, you get that extra point. That's been in place since 2019, so 5 years at this point.
Right.
So that was the Spanish Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz, this was his home Grand Prix, finishes 5th. Fernando Alonso, also in his home Grand Prix, finishes in 7th, behind his teammate Lance Stroll. One of the other few races that Fernando did not get on the podium.
I think this was maybe the start of, Aston Martin getting it wrong, but I'm not sure they were starting to decline. I mean, Alonso, he's doing the best he can. And I think this was the first race that Stroll
Finished ahead of
outraced
Fernando.
him. Yeah, but only by a second. So
It wasn't that big of a gap between those two. It was relatively close because Fernando was able to still close the gap.
right.
Then the following race in the Canadian Grand Prix, Lance's home race, just like in his rookie season in 2017, finishes in the points in 9th place in his home race, ahead of Valtteri Bottas. And funny enough, gets his revenge. Because you mentioned this earlier, Baku 2017, when Valtteri got Lance at the last second coming to the line of the 2017 Azerbaijan Grand Prix. Lance had second in his sight, and then Valtteri, in the more powerful Mercedes, got him at the last minute, finished second instead. Lance with third. This time around, it's vice versa. Valtteri looked to have 9th place, but then Lance had much more momentum and the faster car than the Alfa Romeo. Got him at the last minute. So it was Lance with 9th instead of Valtteri. Again, deja vu all over again, but roles are reversed this time around. Max Verstappen, again, like in Monaco and in the Spanish Grand Prix, gets pole position, leads every single lap, and gets the win, but does not get the fastest lap. That goes to his teammate Checo Perez with 6th. The podium finishes were Fernando Alonso with 2nd and Lewis Hamilton with 3rd. It was close with Verstappen and Alonso, considering Alonso finished 9.5 seconds behind Max Verstappen. And at this stage, Max is almost 70 points ahead of Checo. At this stage, at the time, I said to myself, it's over. Max got this wrapped up. It's over. Next in line is the Austrian Grand Prix at the Red Bull Ring, formerly known as the A1 Ring.
And of course, I said this earlier that this is where McLaren brought their first upgrades.
Mainly with Lando,
Yes.
because Piastri is yet to get the upgrades.
Well, considering Norris, he actually finished 4th, while
Yes, he did.
Piastri, he finished and 1 lap behind.
The only driver that did not finish is Nico Hulkenberg, which that was due to a power unit problem. Max Verstappen, to no one's surprise, pole position, leads most of the laps, gets fastest lap, and wins. Charles Leclerc with 2nd place after leading for 10 laps, Max and Leclerc the only two that led, and Checo rounding out the podium with 3rd. Lando Norris, as you said moments ago, finishes in 4th, in the McLaren MCL 60 that they had for this 2023 season. Fernando Alonso finishes 5th, rounding out the top 5, finishing ahead of his fellow Spaniard and fellow compatriot Carlos Sainz. And Max increasing his lead, now 81 points ahead of Checo. That was race number 9. Round 10 now. We go to the British Grand Prix at Silverstone, where you're watching this one live.
Of course, because you know what they say that the British crowd gives the British drivers a little more power.
And a little
it's somewhat true, because of course Norris he actually got second ahead of Hamilton.
Yes, Hamilton finished 3rd place, and Piastri was 4th place. At this stage, his best finish.
Yes.
Guess who got the fastest lap?
Is it Checo again?
Verstappen.
Can't forget.
Verstappen.
No.
You surprised?
Not really.
You're gonna hear that a lot. And Max, to no one's surprise, pole position, led the most laps and won. And again, got the fastest lap. I mean, Lando, he finished almost 4 seconds behind. Maybe if Piastri, because Piastri and Lando, they started the race 2nd and 3rd. I feel like if Piastri and Lando work together to keep Max at bay, maybe that would give Lando a chance for a possible win. Maybe even Lewis could get in the mix, who finished almost 7 seconds behind Max Verstappen and very close behind Lando Norris, but still, you get my drift. At least, I hope you get my drift. Checo, by the way, if you're wondering, finishes 6th in the British Grand Prix. 3 drivers did not finish. Those drivers were Pierre Gasly following a crash, Kevin Magnussen following an engine problem, and Esteban Ocon with an oil leak problem. And Max now almost 100 points ahead of Checo. And this is round 10 out of 22. Were you already saying at this stage that Max has got the championship wrapped up because of how much of a gap he's increased in the championship standings?
I still can't determine because it's still early. Anything can happen. So I didn't know what to expect yet.
Silverstone. Do you remember the McLaren drivers ran the chrome livery?
Oh yeah. That was actually really nice.
Reminded you of something? Did it remind you of the McLaren MP429?
Oh yeah.
And also the Vodafone McLaren Mercedes days.
That's that car is pretty much iconic. Well, that livery is iconic since they had that. Yeah, I would say that's kind of like one of the iconic liveries besides the Marlboro
and
McLaren.
West.
But of course, yeah.
And also there was the Johnny Walker sponsorship that they bought in 2006. That too.
Right.
Which is also in a chrome livery. So that's what reminded me of those paint schemes. The 2006 paint scheme, the Vodafone McLaren Mercedes era, and the MP429 that they bought in 2014. Which has been a full decade now since that McLaren MP429 race. Full decade of the turbo V6 hybrids. Feel old yet?
No.
2023 Hungarian Grand Prix, which is round 11 in the championship. Guess who led the most laps? Or every single lap, I mean.
Max.
Yes. Do you remember who finished 2nd?
We're talking about Hungary now, or
yes, we're talking about the Hungarian Grand Prix.
Okay. Yeah. So 2nd was Norris.
Yes.
Ahead of Perez.
Yes. Do you remember this race, do you remember the podium celebration?
I don't think I saw, like, every time I see Max win, I don't really see the cooldown or the podium celebration. So, no, I do not.
At that point, you knew Max was already in a league of his own.
Yeah,
And guess who got the fastest lap?
I don't really need to say it.
Max Verstappen. Surprise?
No, not really.
At this stage, 110 points ahead of his teammate Checo. Now, you remember what I keep referring? You remember I keep bringing up Nick de Vries from time to time? Well, in the Hungarian Grand Prix, he wasn't in this race.
No, this was actually the first race that they brought Logan Sargent.
Ricardo.
I mean,
Ricardo.
I'm sorry, Ricardo. I'm sorry, yeah, because they decided to drop him after 10 races,
Because
which
of how bad he did.
I mean, the AlphaTauri isn't the most competitive car. It's even below the midfield.
Which,
But it was not that good of a car.
granted,
Even though
Tsunoda also
he-
struggled to get a glimpse of the car, but de Vries struggled even more. If I bring up Nick de Vries' stats from 2023, Bahrain finishes 14th, Saudi finishes 14th, Australia crashed. I think Logan Sargent crashed into the back of him, which he did. Baku crashed, finishes dead last. Miami finishes 18th, barely holding on to the lead lap by a thread. Monaco finishes 12th after starting in 12th. Spanish Grand Prix finishes 14th after starting in 14th. Canada finishes 18th. Austria finishes 17th. And Silverstone finishes 17th. You notice anything what I just said? Not a single points finish. His best finish, 12th. Again, Monaco.
I'm I mean, Red Bull and Helmut Marko, they do. I mean, I don't know why they decided to give him a seat after like one race when, he took over the one race at Monza because Albon was sick.
Yes. Do you know why they hired him, right?
And-
Because Nick de Vries finished in the points. That's why.
Right, but they just based on that one race, which I think that's. I mean, no, he's a very accomplished driver in the other categories, of course.
Formula E, I think.
Formula 2 champion, Formula E champion, even though they probably don't really consider that a champion, Formula E, but
They don't.
especially Formula 2. Well, I mean, not to them because it's just another form, so they don't really, because the ladder is usually Formula 2 and then Formula 1. Formula E is just another form of motorsport, but it's not really, I guess,
The road
part
to
of the
Formula 1.
F1 ladder. Yeah. But I think it doesn't. I think it kind of saddens that drivers that once they win Formula 2, they should be able to at least have a seat, or I guess be part of a team that they're next in line to have that seat. But unfortunately, most drivers stay in that seat, and then the Formula 2 drivers, champions, have to sit out either with the reserve driver position or be in another type of motorsport. Of course, Nick de Vries had to go with Formula E.
Oscar Piastri, I believe, had the same road, but didn't he win the
Well,
Formula 2 championship in 2021?
yes.
I figured. but he didn't do any race.
Because
He wasn't on the
he-
grid in 2022 though.
No, because well, he won. I know he won Formula 2. He won Formula 3 and whatever category below that. But he won those pretty like back to back. So they're like he was pretty impressive. But the other thing that I don't like is especially like Formula 2. Once you win Formula 2, you cannot come back.
You can't?
Which that kind of no. Once you win the title, you're not allowed to come back. I don't know why they do that.
That's
So
stupid.
that's why. My poor exactly. But that's why Nick DeVries had to settle for Formula E. At least Formula E does not have that dumb rule. Once you win, you can stay there for as long as
however long you
have to.
want.
Right. But yeah, that's the one thing for Formula 2 because that's usually the ladder. Once you win Formula 2, you should be able to advance to Formula 1. But that's not the case because there's no seats, especially drivers that really don't deserve to be there, or they're just hogging a seat that for other generation drivers should be able to have.
That's how it is. But years ago, it was kind of like that, but it was formatted differently. Because you remember in 1983,
Mhm.
Senna went to Formula 3 or British Formula 3, but I don't think they had it. Yeah, they didn't have a Formula. Well, they kind of did have a Formula 2, but it was named differently. But again, Senna went
Well,
from British Formula 3
well,
straight
back
to Formula
then,
1 the following year.
well, before it was Formula 2, it was GP2 and there was GP3. So
It was renamed to F3 and F2 in 2019, if I'm not mistaken. Yes?
I believe so. I mean, I don't recall. I do remember they changed that. I'm not familiar when they actually changed it because I do recall that it was GP3 and GP2, but
I'm pretty sure they changed
not
it in
familiar.
2019. I'm pretty sure. And at the end of the Hungarian Grand Prix, at the end of that 2023 edition, do you remember the podium celebration?
For Hungary, right?
Yes.
No, I do not. Like I said, once I see Matt's cross the line, I do not see the podium celebration or cool down lap.
So you meant to tell me you missed the part where Lando smashed the winner's trophy that Max won?
Oh, I saw that online. I mean, I saw that like, yeah, when he he hits the champagne bottle, but of course Max's trophy just tilts over and it broke.
That was funny as hell.
I was laughing. I was laughing. I was laughing. I'm still laughing.
Oh,
But
dude, that was funny as hell.
was that? I think no, I definitely saw it on like I think it was Instagram. Of course, the F1 their account, and that was
The
funny.
official F1 website, the official F1 account.
Yeah.
Daniel Ricciardo, who replaced Nick DeVries, started 13th in this race in the Hungarian Grand Prix and finishes 13th. Slow start in his comeback race. His teammate, Yuki Tsunoda, finished a couple of spots behind him in 15th, both of whom went down. 3 drivers did not finish. Logan Sargent and the 2 Alpines crashed out. Gasly and Ocon. Ocon, who won the 2021 edition of this race. But the McLaren at this stage showing potential and promise, considering how much they're bringing into the table at this stage, with Lando with 2nd place and Piastri with 5th in the Mercedes sandwich, with Hamilton 4th and Russell in 6th. Now, regarding Hamilton, you remember he won the pole for this race?
Yes, he did, and that was quite a surprise that he actually got pole.
Well, you were shocked, were you?
Oh, I was celebrating when he
Same here.
secured it. I was celebrating,
Same
and
here.
yeah, I I'm probably my neighbors probably hated me because I was screaming so loud.
You were screaming, were you?
Yes,
Early in the
and
morning, late at night.
I'm pretty sure Hamilton was relieved that he actually got pole, and probably he had a little more confidence with the team.
Man, if only we were recording our reactions for qualifying. I can't imagine what your reaction was like when Hamilton got the pole position.
Oh, I was out of my chair.
As
I can't really describe. I can't really describe how my initial reaction was. I was really excited and glad that he managed to get pole.
Wait, what time was
If
qualifying
only.
again? Was it early in the morning?
I think usually I think it's well, no, I think it's around usually qualifying is around the same time as the actual race, which usually Hungary was at around 9, so that's usually around where qualifying is supposed to start too.
9 a.m.
Yeah.
That's still relatively not that bad. It's better than 3 a.m. I can tell you that much. Verstappen
Oh,
led every lap
well,
Hungarian Grand Prix. Lando Norris finished second, and again Perez with third. Max with the fastest lap, and again led every single lap. It just whipped the floor with everybody, finishing almost 34 seconds ahead too of second place Lando. And what were you saying?
if a race is like early in the morning, like at 3 a.m., I know my neighbors would also hate me because Crawford doesn't really say, turn the volume up because I actually do.
You have your volume up.
Hey, I go with the instructions. He says turn it up. I will turn it up. It's the start of the race.
Dude, I do the exact same thing. You're not the only one. Wait,
I mean,
wait.
whenever I
You
do
have it
see
up
my
at
neighbors, I
you have it
say,
up at full volume?
when I do see my neighbors, I do tell them in advance that I will be turning up the volume if it's too loud. I'm sorry, but I'm going with the instructions when they tell me to turn it up. But Crawford doesn't say that anymore.
He doesn't?
Probably for that reason. I haven't heard it in a while.
Maybe it could be that reason alone. Now, do you have
Probably.
the volume all the way up though? That's my biggest question.
I go pretty loud. I don't really see if it's at the loudest, but it's pretty loud. Loud, as loud as usually it's not supposed to at that time. If it's like 3 a.m. But if it's like 9, 10, I mean it's pretty loud, but most people should be up anyway.
Exactly.
Or they're already out, so I don't think it makes that much of a difference. But if
Plus,
it's
I'm
at
sure you
3
have
a.m.,
people in the neighborhood that play loud music anyway, especially at that time.
if they have loud music, oh well, okay, then I can turn it up even louder, but I can disturb my other neighbors.
Exactly. So you could just do. Hey, it's a thing called you do that and then some.
Yes.
That's exactly what that is. Round 12, then. The Belgian Grand Prix. Guess who won it?
Max.
Yes. Checo with the second place finish. Charles Leclerc, who won the pole, gets third, rounding at the podium. Hamilton with fourth. Fernando with fifth. This comes back to what you said in the pilot episode, where Aston Martin had a decent package. Well, they had the second or third fastest car in the beginning of the season, but as the races went on, they slowly started to fall off. And here it's starting to show. Yeah, they got a top 5 finish with Fernando in the top 9 with Lance Stroll. But still, they're not on the podium again at the stage.
Well, Alonso isn't on the podium.
What?
I said Alonso's not on the podium because
Nope.
he was the only one that was hitting the podiums.
Exactly. And again, that's how
And
you
also,
that
you know,
Fernando's doing most of the work.
you know, Alonso, he's doing all that he can. So I think he still did pretty decent, at least being, you know, in the top 10. But it was still a struggle, mostly because the setup is wrong. Maybe, yeah, mostly the setup is usually the main problem. But also the strategy also plays a factor for the race.
Yep, that too. That too. Which they had a strategy going on for Piastri, but the opening lap going into the first corner, which is La Source, Carlos Sainz and Piastri came to blows, which actually hindered Piastri's progress and therefore had to park up and retire. Carlos Sainz also had to park up and retire, but over 20 laps later. Those are the only two that did not finish the race due to the crash. Lewis Hamilton
And, you
was
know,
the fastest lap, by the way.
and of course, you know, Piastri, he's you know, been to, you know, a good amount of the races that F1 has done, but it is the first time he's racing in an F1 car.
Want to know something about this race? Obviously, aside from Sainz and Piastri, because they were the ones that did not finish. Every
Right.
single driver running finished on the lead lap in this race.
Yeah.
Every single driver that was running finished on the lead lap. That's how big the Spa-Francorchamps circuit is. Again,
I mean, Belgium and, you know, Suzuka are, you know, well, those are my personal favorites, but they're also, you know, drivers' favorite tracks.
yes,
Those are driver tracks.
it's a driver's track for many and the fans' favorite track for. When I say many, I mean many fans. Next up is the Dutch Grand Prix, Max Verstappen's home turf. Guess who won it?
Yeah, no surprise.
You know who won, don't you?
The only Dutchman.
Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
Fernando Alonso was
But
second. I took the words out of your mouth, did I?
and yep, and also Gasly. He managed to get third place.
Which he did. After starting 12th on the grid, made his way up to third. This race, though, in particular, had the infamous rainfall at the beginning stage. At least, I'm pretty sure it was the beginning stage. I do know there was rainfall, a big rainfall at that. But they kept
Yes.
going, and the race
They-
finished in 2 hours and 24 minutes. 3 drivers did not finish. Zhou Guanyu, Charles Leclerc, and Logan Sargent. Now, Logan got into Q3 for the first time in his career at this stage with the 10th place starting grid, but
well,
crashed.
also for Sargent, he I think that was that I think that was during the race that he crashed, right?
Yes, it was.
Oh yeah, I mean that was a pretty pricey crash that he did. Another one.
Another one. Yet another one. But he wasn't the only one sidelined. We have Zhou Guanyu, who
Right.
also spun off, and Charles Leclerc retired because of a mechanical problem. And Max, Lando, and Checo were the only ones that led in this race. But Max obviously led the most laps, 61 out of 72. And this was the race where, okay, if we go back 10 years, do you remember Brazil 2013?
Yes.
You watched it live?
Yes.
What happened at the end of the race?
I'm trying to remember. So I didn't. Well, 2012 that was a rain. So, and that's for yeah. Let's see. Let me try to recall. 2013 Brazil, correct?
Yes.
Well, of course, it was Vettel, Weber, and Alonso.
Yes. But there's a twist regarding Vettel, though. You want me to say it?
I know he had a record-breaking win.
Of
Try. Yeah, you can say it. I'm trying to
9
get
in
more
a row.
information. Oh, yeah.
After Hamilton won the Hungarian Grand Prix 11 years ago now. In 2013, after Hamilton won, the last 9 races were all Seb. They were all Vettel. Last 9 races were all him, winning 9 in a row. And at this stage in the 2023 season, at the conclusion of the Dutch Grand Prix, guess how many races Max has won in a row now?
I'm guessing 9.
9. Max, wait, obviously, as we know, in Red Bull machinery. What was Sebastian Vettel racing in 2013?
A Red Bull.
You see it. You see a coincidence there?
But these are two different types of machinery. Of course, back in
In different eras.
2013 was
The V8 era.
still V8, but you know,
The ending of the V8 era, I should say, because it was the last year of the V8s.
right. And 2014 will be the start of the hybrid system.
Yep.
And also the last championship for Vettel.
Wait, what?
It would be the last title Vettel wins.
Yes, which he locked up in the
Because
Indian Grand Prix in 2013.
Well, of course, he struggled massively in 2014.
So you're
Because he
saying that
couldn't handle-
2014 was a bad season for Vettel?
Well, you can clearly see, and that's why Ricardo he was a little better
Which he was.
with Vettel. Yes.
But to your point,
Well,
Vettel had
also-
a bad 2014
Well,
season.
Vettel was having reliability problems, and he was not happy.
Monaco and Austria comes to mind in 2014 regarding him in that case.
Especially Austria.
When he
That
thought
was
when he lost drive and then got it back again.
Mhm.
But when he got it back again, there was no point and retired from the race because
Yeah.
good move too to save the power unit. But still,
Yeah, even
doesn't
though
help
you
the
know,
fact that he still
even
struggled.
though even though the hybrid system was still relatively new.
To everybody. Red
But
Bull
of course,
had their power unit had teething troubles, as you know. But it more so favored in the hands of Danny Rick, considering he won 3 races and got more podiums than Vettel, and finished ahead
Right.
of him in the championship standings, with 3rd in the standings. Vettel 5th place in the standings, if I'm not mistaken. But again, to your point, 2014, you're saying is considered to be a bad season for Vettel. Yes?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I mean,
Other people will beg to differ on that.
I saw that Vettel couldn't get a handle on the hybrid system.
Which he didn't. Yeah, he
No.
got 4 podiums, but that doesn't help the fact that he struggled massively.
And of course, his famous line when he, went to Ferrari, when he said, well, I guess retired, or again he had reliability problems at Sochi, and of course he
2015?
said
No, 2014.
No, when he was in Ferrari, and they were at Sochi.
2015.
He said to he wanted to bring the V10s back.
Oh, that was 2019. 2019.
Yeah. his famous line to bring the V10s back. That he was really still not a fan of the hybrid system.
At the time, when he said that quote,
Yes.
bring back the V12.
Yes.
Bring back the V12s, he said.
Yeah.
Because that was what Ferrari had back in the day. The last V12 that they used was 1995, which they won the Canadian Grand Prix that year, courtesy of Jean Alesi at the time.
Mm-hmm.
The last Ferrari the last Ferrari V12 package to win the Formula One Grand Prix. Canada 1995, courtesy of Jean Alesi. His only win in Formula One, by the way. And Ferrari's
Right.
only win of the 95 season, too. So that was the Dutch Grand Prix. Again, Max Verstappen tied Sebastian Vettel's record of 9 in a row at this stage. And finished the race in 2 hours and 24 minutes. Pole position, Fernando Alonso with the fastest lap, finishes second. And again, Max Verstappen led not every single lap, but he led the most laps. Sergio led 10 laps, and Lando Norris led for 1 lone lap. George Russell, the last car on the running order to finish, but in 17th. And like in Belgium, everybody finished in the points. Not in the points, but on the lead lap is what I'm saying. Everybody finished on the lead lap. That's what I meant to say. Round 14 takes place at Monza. This one, I mainly remember this race because of the battle Ferrari had on track. You remember that race?
No,
that particular moment?
Well, before we get into the Italian Grand Prix, let's go back to the Dutch Grand Prix.
Okay.
Lawson, replaced Ricciardo since he had that crash during qualifying.
I remember. Now, wait, was it qualifying or practice? It was practice.
It was practice, okay. I thought it was qualifying. But
when Oscar Piastri spun, Ricciardo tried to avoid him.
He tried to.
He did,
rather
he
just
hit
crash,
the barrier in the process. It may look like
and he did not
wreck, and it may look
but he did not take his hands off the wheel.
But like you said, Dave, he did not get his hands off the wheel, and because of that, when he made contact with the barrier, the steering wheel just wrenched Ricciardo's hands, and he had that hand injury.
Right, and usually whenever there's a crash, if you know you cannot save it, you might as well just take your hands off.
Because if you
don't,
you'll end up like Ricciardo with a hand injury.
Well, that's usually going to be the result. So you just better just take it off and just go for the ride. If the car gets damaged, the car gets damaged, but at least you're still safe and not injured. But of course, Ricciardo. But of course, Ricciardo, he just returned into F1 after his
almost a year hiatus.
Well, mostly, kind of like getting bought out his contract with McLaren.
Mainly, McLaren did him dirty, but that's a 2022 story.
Right, but this was not. This kind of handicap Ricciardo in a way that to show Red Bull that he could be an option to be back at Red Bull if they do decide that. But since he had the injury, he's going to be out of a few races. So those are the few races that he's not going to be able to show that.
Because of, again, the hand injury.
Yes.
And Liam Lawson came in to take his place for a little while Ricciardo was on the recovery. And speaking of, Liam Lawson in his Formula One debut finishes 13th after qualifying on 19th place on the starting grid.
I think that was a pretty decent performance by Lawson, because he did outrace Sonoda since he finished 15th.
Yes.
So I think that was pretty decent, and I would say that's probably the expectation that their car would be. And of
Even
course,
though they weren't
Lawson,
close to finishing in the points, it was still a solid performance for a first timer in Liam Lawson.
and the Dutch Grand Prix is not an easy track. It's more like a roller coaster, especially
Like Coda.
well, no, especially the one corner that it's it's a high bank turn that it's pretty tricky to get the right line. Well, it's a weird line actually that you have to ride in a weird way that doesn't look natural.
to make
But it,
to make the corner to get a good entry and a good
Well-
exit. All the
but
same,
yeah,
all the same. Again, 13th place in your first race. If you ask me, that's not
I
that.
mean,
Again, for
no, I
the
think
first
that's
time.
I would say that's pretty decent, and I would say pretty impressive for
For the newcomer.
someone who just had to, well, pretty much had to come in at pretty much last minute.
Exactly.
Well, kind of like pretty much like Hulkenberg when he had to sub in for like Checo and
Lance in 20.
Lance. Well, yeah, but Hulkenberg, he actually did a really great job.
And racing point equipment when again Checo and Lance were sick and had COVID.
Right. But also Hulkenberg, he had like very little notice. He had to like literally hop on a plane to go wherever he had to, hop in the car
Wait a
and
minute.
just go.
In the Belgian Grand Prix, wasn't it? But regarding Alpine, wasn't it Otmar? I don't know how you say his last name. Otmar, who?
Safnauer.
Thank you. Otmar Snapnauer. Wasn't it his final race as team principal? At Alpine at the end of the Belgian Grand Prix.
I don't recall, but I probably think it was.
I think it was because I do remember that was mentioned in the articles. I think F1 themselves brought it up on their F1 news feed when it was
Mhm.
in the moment after the Belgian Grand Prix. I could be wrong though. Next up is Monza, as I said earlier. Great battle that the
Mhm.
Ferraris that the Ferraris had on track. And in the end, Sainz got the better of Leclerc with a third place, and Leclerc with fourth place. And Sainz led 14 laps. Much to the delight of the T4SC, but of course they would expect a 1-2 finish, which that honor goes to. You probably guessed it by now. Red Bull.
Yeah,
And guess who won it?
the Dutchman.
You already know who it is. Max Verstappen. Checo
Yeah.
finishes second. So again, you get a team 1-2 finish, but it's not Ferrari, it's Red Bull. Max with the win, Checo with second, and Carlos with third. Again, at least the T4SC have something to smile about considering, again, Sainz made the podium behind the Red Bulls. And with this win, Max Verstappen, 10 in a row. Let me ask you this, Dave. When Sebastian Vettel won 9 in a row 10 years prior, did you see that record being surpassed?
No. Well, I mean, of course, during the Vettel era, he was pretty dominant. So, I mean, every race you probably expect is probably gonna be Vettel to win.
And we're seeing it here 10 years later with Max winning every single race weekend. And again, 10 in a row at this stage. And if you're wondering, out of the 51 laps run, Max led 33 of them, his former car number. And the fastest lap, as far as that is concerned, that honor goes to McLaren's Oscar Piastri, who finishes in 12th. But did lead a lap. He did lead a lap. his teammate Lando Norris finished in 8th place in the points, scoring a bag of 4 points. And at this stage, Max is 145 points ahead of Checo. At this rate, even though it's not official at this stage, won the championship. Again, even though it's not official at this stage. The Mercedes,
And of course,
Russell and Hamilton finishes 5th and 6th. What were you saying?
Of course, Alonso just managed to get the 2 points in 9th place.
Yes. Where was Lance Stroll at?
Hefty 16th place.
16th place. Last car on the lead lap.
And of course, there was only 2 cars that DNF'd.
I presume you also have racing reference up?
Yep, and I see that Ocon and Tsunoda,
Ocon
they
with a
were...
steering problem and Yuki Tsunoda with a power unit problem. Next on the board, hold on, where did Liam finish? 11th, just outside the points. Valtteri.
Again, this was his second race, and again,
13th in the first race, but in the second race.
And also the Dutch Grand Prix, was Liam the one who overtook Max? I think he was the one who was a little ballsy and he overtook Max.
Was it in the rain though? That's my biggest question.
I believe it was.
I gotta look at the footage again.
I do remember it was wet, so I'm pretty sure.
So it was in the wet.
He
then.
did.
It was in the wet then.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
Max still won regardless, and won this stage.
Yeah.
Won the Italian Grand Prix under 1 hour and 13 minutes. Next, we go to a curveball, and that's the Singapore Grand Prix. I say curveball because Max Verstappen won the race. No, he did not. No, he did not. Max did not win.
No, actually, this was like, I think by far the worst. I won't say the worst, but not Red Bull's best
weekend.
Weekend, yeah.
Because Max and Checo, for that matter, they struggled in qualifying. Checo was 13th, and Max, would you believe it, 11th fastest.
I was actually happy to see that result.
And for once, Red Bull not making it into the top 10, and let alone not making the podium. For once.
Right.
Who led every single lap from pole?
Well, that's got to be one of the Ferraris.
And that of Carlos Sainz. Started from pole, led every single lap, and got the job done, winning the race. Spoiler alert, Ferrari's only win of 2023. Lando Norris in the McLaren finishes in 2nd after starting 4th. Sir Lewis Hamilton finishes 3rd after starting 5th. It was a close fight with Sainz, Norris, Hamilton, and Russell. But you notice, I say Sainz, Norris, and Hamilton finished on the podium, and I mentioned Russell as well. But Russell did not finish on the podium, or in the points for that matter, because you watched the race live, so you know what happened.
Yes, he just upped and crashed into the barrier on the final lap, or on the final lap. On the final lap, yeah. It was just. And I think we discussed this on the pilot, yeah.
We did. We did.
Yeah, yeah, and either because Singapore is notorious to be a very challenging and hot track.
You're in there for 2 hours. Well, in this race, it finished under 2 hours, 1 hour and 46 minutes. But still, you get my point.
Also, Singapore is also notorious for having multiple safety cars.
Well, in this one, they had a very few. 2 of them to be exact. One of them a full course safety car, and the other a virtual safety car.
But also, usually Singapore is usually the only race that usually goes over the 2 hour mark.
But again, in this case, it did not. It was under the 2-hour mark of 1 hour and 46 minutes.
Surprising.
You know why that is, right? Because they updated the circuit. No more.
Well,
was
that
the-
and also
no more was the the corner or the part where they go underneath
This-
the grandstands at the final sector. That
right.
no more. That was no more. They scrapped that portion. That's why it probably finished under 2 hours.
Well, and also they also removed the chicane.
They did?
The chicane before. Yeah, because there was a chicane just before you go under the bridge.
Yes. Yes, I know what you're referring to now.
Now it's just
It's straight.
just a 90-degree.
Or 90-degree turn.
Yeah. So that because you because usually we've seen when they have big curves, that could really damage the cars.
Oh, those big ass curbs, you mean?
Well, we're not talking about big like the sausage curves, like when they had that one year in Austria, that would literally like break the suspension.
And the underfloor of the car.
Right, but
Hamilton had that problem
mostly
in 2021.
if you right, but I mean that's how Singapore was with the chicane, but they took that out, so that made it a little quicker.
Hence, again, why they finished the race under 2 hours. You're probably shocked by that still, aren't you?
Yes, because I've always seen that Singapore always tends to go in once they go past the 2-hour mark. Now it's just a time race.
Well, in this case, it was a time race, but they still managed to somehow finish under the 2-hour mark.
Well, what was
when the
it?
two Red Bulls finished, Max finished in 5th, Checo with P8. So they both still got points, regardless, the Red Bull drivers. Hamilton, again,
Right.
with the fastest lap of the race. Who has won Singapore Grand Prix, what was it, 4 times now? 2009, 2014, 17, and 18. So yeah, 4 times.
I mean, Norris, he did a fantastic job holding Hamilton. Well, he
And
was
Russell,
actually
too.
holding back. Well, he was holding back both the Mercedes, but then, of course, Russell just went in. He went straight into the barrier. I'm not
Dude,
sure.
I thought there was a mechanical problem at first when I looked at the footage live as it was happening. But
Well, once you just see like the background, all you see is Norris, you see Hamilton, and then you just see someone just going straight. It just happened to be Russell. And like, what? You just like shot like, wait, what happened? I thought he had like a brake by wire problem.
I thought the same thing.
Or just any electrical problem. Maybe he didn't have drive anymore.
Because how much
But
smoke's are flying from underneath.
That, but again, that's Singapore is by far the toughest track.
The
It's
toughest
hot.
period.
Yeah, because you see it's night, but that doesn't make a difference in Singapore. It's actually
Yeah, because it's
pretty
near the equator and it's scorching hot, especially at night.
right. Even if you're not in Singapore, just being in F1 car alone with all the race gear, you're looking in the cockpit. The driver sustains at least 40 degrees centigrade in the cockpit alone.
And lose weight.
Now when you're at when you add Singapore with scorching temperatures, that adds a level of difficulty.
You best hope and pray
And
you best hope and pray that your drinking button doesn't malfunction.
Unless you'll be like Kimi Räikkönen back in the day, like no, you don't get drink. You drink, no.
Is the switch on or not? That was from Hungary 2018, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Raikkonen, he did not have any drinking system. It was not connected.
It was not?
No, he didn't have the drink. It was not connected. So during that race, he did not have the drink.
I thought they were doing that deliberately. So I thought, like I said, I thought he had the drink, but they weren't giving it to him deliberately.
No, it was not connected. So he did not have the drink.
This
I think they forgot to connect it.
This was in Hungary,
So-
2018, yes?
Yes, and Hungary is also a challenging track, and you definitely need to hydrate, but not too much.
Singapore as well. More so.
So Singapore, definitely you do need to hydrate, and also before the race, you can take an ice bath, have a like an ice vest to stay cool, because it's very mental, Singapore.
Very, very. Especially the driver, you have to stay hydrated and keep cool as much as possible. You see in the visor and the onboards, some drivers lift in the visor up a little bit just to get air alone.
Yeah, and also it's best to have a clear or amber visor, because you have the lights also.
Yes, that too. Especially
It's
light those
still
lights
dark.
are in Singapore.
Yes, so your visor has to be clear or amber.
Yes.
But if you remember, they had the one on board with Vettel when he was with Ferrari. They had like the onboard towards his face, and you can see that Vettel did not blink during his lap. Like his eyes were open the entire lap.
Dude, that's how you know he was in the zone.
Well, I mean, I was blinking the entire time, just looking at Vettel, not blinking. Like,
Really?
dude, I'm blinking.
Dude, I can see that usually happens because I can remember. You remember we did the touring car championship
Yes.
when we did that. When you're in the cart, right? When you're doing
Mhm.
a lap or two, if not more, do you blink as you're out there on the track?
I don't recall if I blink or not. I
I
mean,
don't.
once you're in the zone, sometimes you don't know if you blink or not.
Exactly, because I can remember I don't blink at all, if not rarely.
I mean, if you're like really on a very solid lap and you have a decent cart, yeah, I mean, you're pretty much on it. And like I said, I can't really recall if I blink or not.
For me personally, it rarely happens. Rarely. So I can see, to your point regarding Vettel, where you're coming from, where he doesn't blink one time throughout the entire lap. That's happened to me as well, numerous times. Because again, I have my helmet on and the visor down. It blocks out the air as you're going at a fast speed. Because with that visor
Right.
down, again, you don't have that air going through your eyes, forcing you to blink. Especially if you're in the zone, you don't even bother blinking. And like in Monza, Belgium, and no, not Belgium. I know for a fact it was Belgium. Just like in Belgium, everybody that was running in Singapore finished on the lead lap. And again, Carlos Sainz with Ferrari, they'll only win in 2023. Because the next remaining races of 2023, well, we're going to get to that. Next up on the list is Japan in Suzuka, where the two McLarens finished on the podium. Lando Norris and Oscar Piastri, who, by the way, we go back to the Belgian Grand Prix. Oscar Piastri finished second in the sprint race. I think
Right.
Max won the sprint race, and Piastri finished second. I forget who finished third. Again, regarding the sprint in Belgium. But this one here in the Japan race, again, with the McLarens finished second and third, respectively, that means Piastri gets on the podium for the first time in his F1 career. Lando
Yes.
with second place, again, scoring his best finish at this stage in Formula One, and is still yet to get a win. So yeah, Lando's best finish is second. At this point, numerous times I feel like he's finished second. But to my point, like I said, Lando, second place, his teammate Oscar Piastri, third place at the conclusion of the Japanese Grand Prix. This was the race that I was talking about when we were at the Spanish Grand Prix part, where Lewis and Russell raced so close to the point that they were close to touching. And it was in this race that they almost did at the Spoon Curve.
Right. So they kind of almost simulated like Max and Lewis at Brazil.
2021.
They pretty much both went
Recreated
off at the spoon.
They pretty much recreated that particular moment, if we're going to be real.
Right.
Oh,
Yeah, they did.
speaking of Max Verstappen, guess what?
He won.
He won. It was back to winning ways. It was back to winning ways. Back to square one, back to winning ways. Led all but 2 laps and gets the fastest lap.
But of course, this is where McLaren are starting to. Yeah, well, they're starting to
pick up the pieces.
You know, right. Especially, well, at this point, this is the highest finishing for Piastri.
Yes,
third
place. And the first time a rookie at this stage, a rookie has finished on the podium since Lance Stroll in 2017 in Baku. And the drivers that did not finish, we have 1, 2, 3, 5.
Yeah, five retirements.
Both of the Williams drivers of Alexander Albon and Logan Sargent. Lance Stroll, no surprise. Sergio Perez, which he crashed into one of the Haas cars at the hairpin when you come out of that overbridge section. You make that right-hander.
Well, let's talk a little more on
one of the Haas cars gets a penalty, but then had to park up. But when he got the penalty, I think that would affect his chances. If he retired, he would have to face a grid penalty. They got him out, but he still crashed either way. I think that's how the story goes. I think.
Yeah, so
he got into it with one of the Haas cars.
All right, so let's start at the beginning with Perez. So I'm pretty sure he went into the pits, correct?
Yes, he did.
But he got penalized because he overtook, I think, Alonso before heading into the pits.
I thought
it
was because he ran into one of the Haas cars.
No, that was after.
Oh.
That was after.
Was that why he retired?
Yeah, because he broke his front wing twice. I think at the start he had damage to his front wing.
At the very start.
He kind of stayed out, but then he came in, and I think when that happened, I think it was a virtual safety car. He overtook Alonso going into the pits, and then he got a penalty. Changed his front wing.
Oh.
And then he had that. And then he had the collision into the hairpin into it was Magnussen, right? It was a Haas. Yeah.
It was definitely one of the Haas cars. I know that for a fact.
I think it was Magnussen. And that's where he broke his front wing again.
And that's what led him into retirement from the race.
Yeah, pretty much at least it was still drivable, so he managed to get back to the pits. But then he had another penalty for causing a collision. And this is for people that don't remember this, maybe they do. So he was retired. He still had a penalty. Then, for some reason, Red Bull decided to send Checo back out. Right, to serve that penalty. and then retire again. So he
It
retired
makes me
twice.
laugh to this day that they did that.
Like I've never really seen that. I
Me
mean,
either.
yeah, it was still drivable, but I guess to lessen the penalty, I guess for the next race, he did just much rather just serve it and then come right back in and retire again. And,
But he crashed though.
the
So he
well, yeah, but he
he would have to suffer a penalty either way.
well that I don't the F1 rule book is so weird that the engineers, they see those loopholes, so they have to be creative, and that was a weird solution, so to say, I
In a
guess.
situation, you mean?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
mean it
a
was
bizarre one.
that was weird too. When I heard that they were going to send him out again, like, what's the point?
There is no point,
Like,
especially if you're out of the points range.
he's already out of the point. He already retired. I didn't know you can send a car back out. I mean, if the FIA allowed it, maybe, but I'm guessing they did. But I guess, but still, he came back and retired again. But that was the, I guess highlight of the race, if you can say, because that was another bad weekend for Perez.
One of many bad weekends for Perez. I feel like Perez struggled immensely in 2023. Yeah, he got podiums and a few race wins, but still, this was one of those examples.
Like I said before, this is how the trend usually. We're probably going to see this in the upcoming season anyway. That Perez, he gets a handle on the car in the first half, but then towards the midway, the car, will suit Max a little bit more, and Perez will start to struggle.
And falls off the map.
Yes, and we've seen this. This pretty much was his third season, correct?
1, 2, 3. We're going into his
Four.
fourth season.
Well, 2023. This was his third season.
Yes.
Now he's going to his fourth.
Valtteri in his second season. Go ahead. What you're saying?
The past couple seasons, it was pretty much that Perez was he was really good in the first half, and then towards midway, he started to struggle, and but at least this time in the championship, spoiler, he actually managed to finish second in the championship.
Spoiler.
Unlike this season before.
And the season before that.
Well, I mean, if you remember the season before, 22, where he missed out on
this
securing second.
Yeah, because of Brazil, Max refused to move aside in Brazil 2022.
Right, at least give him the extra points that could have secured him for second. But he said, why?
You know why? It had something to do with Monaco qualifying that year.
Yeah, because, I think Perez admitted that he kind of did that on purpose, even though I don't know why. You can crash at Monaco, but you can't really say you did that on purpose, especially he crashed right at Portier. I mean, that's it's mid to low turn just before you go into the tunnel. It's very tight, and you can hit the barriers.
Well, technically, he did hit the barriers when he spun.
Right.
His rear hit the barrier.
But I'm saying I wouldn't say that he did it on purpose, just so you can secure, pole, or at least be on the, on the podium.
Well, in this case, in the 2022, it was Russell Hamilton on the podium. Who finished third again?
Wasn't that Signs?
Hold on, let me open up a new tab so I can see.
So
It's a
of
lot
course
of-
Leclerc got pole. Signs, he came second, and it was Perez. Then Max, well, he had to abort because Perez crashed.
Leclerc, you say Leclerc got the pole in Monaco 2020.
He got pole. I mean, yeah,
Man, he had that one, but Ferrari
he had it.
messed him up. They messed him up.
Right, but I would say he's him and Leclerc and Monaco usually don't mix. He's usually out. Mostly he's out. But this time he missed a podium, so I think he got fourth, which
Yes, he did.
I don't think that's too bad, even though it was supposed to be his win. But I think he kind of like broke that curse of him always just
Wrecking,
like
crashing,
pretty much like DNFing in Monaco.
crashed in 2018. Clipped the barrier at the exit of Last Cast in 2019. 2020, well, it was canceled, so we can't say that. 21
Right.
had a mechanical problem before the race even started in 2021. From the pole, might I add. So that's even more of a gut punch for him. And to your point, the 2022 Sao Paulo Grand Prix in Brazil, Carlos Sainz did get third behind the two Mercedes cars. And in this case, in the Japanese Grand Prix of 2023, Sainz got sixth after starting sixth. Max Verstappen with the fastest lap of the race. Valtteri Bottas was one of the 5 drivers that did not finish because of a crash with Logan Sargent, which that wasn't the only time those two came to blows. You remember Monza. Again, Logan and Valtteri came to blows in that race as well.
Mm-hmm.
Here in Japan, it was the second time. Again, Logan and Valtteri had a coming to blows, which it put, well, technically, Logan would be out either way, but several laps later, Valtteri, though, it would take him out 7 laps in of the Japanese Grand Prix of 2023. Oh, I forgot to mention, in Singapore, we mentioned Liam Lawson from time to time. Well, in the Singapore Grand Prix, Liam, in his third race, finishes in the points. And
yes, he did.
Qualified in the points. Started 10th,
Yes.
finishes 9th. Forgot to mention that. And I'm pretty sure, like I said, this was his third Formula One Grand Prix, which it was.
Yes, it was.
His latest 2 was Japan and Qatar. We'll get to Qatar right now.
Mm-hmm.
So Japan, again, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Oscar Piastri on the podium. Now we go to Qatar. Guess who won?
Well, before we get to the race results, how about we talk about
The sprint?
qualifying?
Oh, qualifying.
No, the qualifying.
What happened in qualifying?
And I think you kind of know where I'm going with it. With one driver
Are you talking
that was not happy. Yes, I am.
Are you referring to the moment where he got physical with his personal trainer?
Personal trainer. Yes, because of course, he was out in Q1. He finished 17th. He was not happy. I think he also crashed out.
In the sprint or qualifying?
No, I believe it was qualifying. Yeah, he was out of qualifying. I mean, he crashed out at qualifying, so he finished 17th.
He also crashed out in Singapore too in qualifying. That just popped in my mind just now.
He was not happy, so once he got back to the garage, was the first thing he did? He took off the steering wheel and he tossed it. He threw it, and I may know that that steering wheel alone costs
Millions of dollars.
at least $1 million just to go right into that steering wheel. So for someone just to throw that, yeah, that's
That's no
that's
good.
not a
That's more money being
that's not a pretty it's
but-
not a pretty penny. And then once he got out, he was heated. His personal trainer just happened to just cross into him, and he shoved him. Now this was also blown up on social media, if you remember.
I do.
Yes, and also a lot of people were comparing this, of course, with Max and Ocon.
2018 in Brazil.
Yes.
But Max did not get held accountable for it though.
Well, for Max, he actually had to serve
A fine?
like a public service. He had to do like some kind of public service or something. But that was Max's punishment for shoving Ocon, but there was no punishment for Lance Stroll, and people were pretty livid, so to speak. Like I said, people were not happy that he did not get like a reprimand or something, probably because it was his own team, so they didn't want to do anything.
Not to mention his father's running the team.
Uh, that could be for another podcast. So just Lance Stroll alone and his father.
That's a whole other
but-
podcast regarding those
That's a
two.
podcast on itself. That's a podcast on itself.
Exactly.
But yeah, that was one of the headlines for that weekend for Stroll and his trainer.
And for the wrong reasons, as you just said.
Yes.
And regarding the sprint, who was the man of the hour?
The only Australian, Oscar Piastri.
Piastri, who won the sprint race.
He did. And also at this point, when I say the only Australian, Ricardo is still out due
Yes,
to his hand injury.
because he was still recovering from his hand injury.
Yes.
Lando, I
But-
think, got second
yes.
in the sprint race, didn't he? Or was it Max?
I believe it was Max. I believe. I believe it was Max.
Yeah, it was
and
Max.
then
It was Max.
Yeah, because he was still Max didn't push as hard because he was more waiting for the actual race, not the sprint.
And even if he took his time in the race, it wouldn't matter. Do you know why?
Why?
He was eligible for the championship in the damn sprint race. And
Mhm.
guess what? He won the championship in the sprint race. You surprised?
Not really.
And in
But
the,
even
no,
though this,
guess who?
but
won
even
it?
though this
And guess who got the fastest lap?
Max, but even though the sprint race is not really considered an actual race, it's almost compared to like the Formula 2 feature race.
So you also watch Formula 2?
I think no, but I do
Me
know
either.
that's sort of it's pretty much similar. They just changed the name, but Piastri did a phenomenal job in the sprint race.
He did. And in
Even
the
though
Christian
that's-
belt,
Yes.
with second, by the way.
Now,
Lando third.
Now, we kind of taught this before. The start of the Qatar Grand Prix.
Oh, God.
Yes, we're going there.
Are you talking about when
Both Mercedes.
the first
both
lap
Mercedes.
ended between Hamilton and Russell?
Yes.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. Well, we discussed this before that.
In the pilot?
I believe so. We talked a lot of controversies, and I think this this is one of them. If not, we'll go talk about it again.
If we have it in the
So
pilot.
of course, no.
I don't think we did. We may have touched it briefly, but not as much. But since we'll
But,
recap
well,
the 2023 season,
briefly is still talking about it, but yeah. So mascot poll, I believe.
no surprise.
Yeah. Was it? I believe it was. It was Russell second, and then Hamilton was third.
Yeah, Hamilton
So,
third place
go
and Russell
ahead.
P2.
Yes. So the first turn is I guess it's like almost similar to like Zandvoort, that it's
It is
you
similar
know,
to that, very reminiscent of that particular corner in Zandvoort.
yeah. So it's like a I would say
kind of
like
like a heavy braking
longer,
zone, but slightly a bit longer than the turn one in
right?
Zandvoort, which is AKA Tarzan corner.
And also Qatar isn't really considered an F1 track. It was more for motorbikes, like MotoGP. This is actually the second year they came to Qatar. Last year they couldn't because Qatar was hosting the FIFA World Cup.
That's why?
Yes. So they had to they didn't go there last season. But, even though they had a 10-year contract, it's more like a 9 years since they had 1 year off. So
Because of 2022, they had the World Cup going on there.
yeah, so that's why Qatar was not on the calendar.
That's why. I was wondering why I wasn't on the calendar 2 years ago.
Right. So that's why. But so at the start, Max, of course, he got the lead. But now the battle with the Mercedes.
Even though it was close in Japan, well, it got closer this one, but too close, as you're about to discuss.
Mm-hmm. So I believe George, he had a pretty decent launch, but I think Hamilton, he was a little quicker, but he was more on the outside. Even the first turn, you can't really ride the outside because of the marbles, and most likely you'll understeer into the gravel. But I believe Hamilton broke a little later, but he turned into Russell. And then
it was inevitable at that.
Bang. And of course, the shock that Hamilton was out.
On the first lap, on the first corner. I bet you were watching that race live, weren't you?
Of course it was.
What was your reaction when you saw that?
I saw Mercedes go off, but then I saw the helmet of Hamilton. And I was like, oh, God damn it.
I kept saying, what the hell? What the hell happened?
But unlike other people, like on social media, even though I, support Hamilton,
same.
It was Hamilton's fault.
Hamilton himself admitted that
collision. What's that?
Hamilton himself admitted that it was his fault.
He did, but if you saw on social media, other people were blaming Russell.
Which they did.
He was pretty much having threats.
What?
But if you saw the onboard, yeah, he was having threats.
Russell was having threats?
Russell was having threats, and they were blaming him for the collision.
Apparently, they went all out with that, but what you just said, when they gave Russell threats? Jeez Louise,
yeah,
man.
It was all over social media. Yeah, but that was a little dark. And also, if you saw the onboard, where was Russell supposed to go?
He was sandwiched.
Pretty much like sandwiched. There was no room to go towards the inside because, the rear end of Max was there. He can't go to the outside. Well, his teammates there. Hamilton, well, he just turned just a little too soon, but I guess he didn't think that Russell was that close to his rear end.
Well, it was clear as day since he turned in where Russell would
A
took the
little too
racing line, and that was it.
right, and like I said, there was nowhere that Russell couldn't go, so it was 100% Hamilton, and Hamilton said that he saw the footage and he does take blame.
Which he did. He owned
Yes.
up and apologized. Do you remember that one shot of Hamilton walking towards the camera and Russell going by in the background?
Yeah, and
Watch
was
Netflix.
a
Watch Netflix milk the crap out of that shot in the promos. I'm
well,
calling it now.
well, no, well, that's gonna probably be part of a episode, I guess.
You already know.
Yeah, but Hamilton got fined because he crossed the track.
He got fined for that?
Yeah, even though it was, I think it was on a safety car or a virtual safety car, because there were like some debris from that collision. But also Max did the same thing in 21 when they crashed in Monza. But he didn't get fined. So
Hamilton did.
yes.
The inconsistency by the FIA.
Again.
As we see we went more in detail in the pilot.
I mean, a lot of people always they always have hatred for the FIA and the stewards because of the inconsistency.
Yes.
Especially like this year that they were constantly rotating different stewards. So that's not really consistency.
No. At that point, you're playing musical chairs.
Pretty much. You have to keep the same stewards to keep it consistent. And also when they compared the one collision, it was Perez and Leclerc in Austria. Was it
2021?
And they compared it to another race. I forget, but the drivers, the only comparison they saw that was different was, I think it was dirt, and the other was gravel. So there was like a difference in the penalty, which didn't make sense.
You know, frankly, the FIA doesn't make any sense at times, if not all
No,
inconsistent calls. Now, Qatar, right? In qualifying and in the race, in the sprint race to an extent, you know how a lot of drivers were getting track limit warnings?
yes.
At that stage, I was thinking to myself, is this Austria 2.0? Jesus Christ almighty.
Oh my God, yeah.
Because Austria, I forgot to mention this when we were at the Austrian part, the Austrian Grand Prix part, there were multiple track limit warnings.
Oh my God, it was
track limits penalties.
I mean, it was like that meme, like the Wolf of Wall Street, like everyone's getting like time penalties because they're crossing the track limit.
Qatar was seeing the same thing. Again, is what I said. Is this Austria 2.0? Jesus Christ. Which, how many track limit warnings were there on the Austrian Grand Prix again?
Let me see. I mean, that's
Oh, you're looking it up right now, aren't you?
Yes.
While you're doing that, Logan Sargent of Qatar, like Singapore, the heat you have to deal with. And a lot of drivers were complaining about that. And Logan Sargent didn't even finish the race, retired, pulled out because of the illness due to the heat. 3 retirements, by the way, from the Qatar Grand Prix. Logan Sargent, again, due to heat exhaustion. Lewis, the first lap incident with his teammate George Russell, and Carlos Sainz, fuel leak problem. I don't think.
Okay, so
Sainz didn't
for
even
so
come
for
off
the
the
Austrian
grid.
Grand Prix, the FIA revealed that in the aftermath of race control, had received more than 1,200 reports of potential offenses during the afternoon.
I'm sorry, what?
Yeah, like 1,200.
Did you just say
Like there was like,
1200?
yeah, that's what it said. Then the race, a fellow podcast and YouTube channel, they reported that the number ended up being closer to 1,500 reviewed allegations. My God,
The track
it was
limits.
a track limit. I guess. I mean, there was like
Dude,
but then
at that rate, what's
I
the
mean,
point?
there was a
we want
Um,
the clock. 20 years, there would be no such thing as track limits.
like I get that, they are strict on rules, but they come to the point that when they have penalties, it doesn't make it fun.
It doesn't.
Like it doesn't make race. It doesn't make it racing anymore.
Again, rewind the clock 20 years, there will be no such thing as track limits.
Like if they should go back if you like continue like after like 3 track limits, that's an automatic disqualification. It should be, or at least, well, no. So after 3, you'll get a time penalty. If you do more, you'll get disqualified because you're not within the track limits.
You're overdoing it.
Yeah, you're overdoing it. So there's no point of putting multiple time penalties. You might as well just be disqualified.
Exactly.
Because you're just that they haven't done that. They just mostly just rather just give the time penalties.
Which I'm pretty sure there were in the Austrian Grand Prix, as well as the Qatar Grand Prix, because of they exceeded the track limit warnings. But as far as the disqualifications are concerned, that hasn't happened. With Qatar out of the way now, it's on to.
Well, before we head past Qatar, what about the one incident with Perez
Talking
with
about
the 3-way back?
You're talking about the sprint race.
Yes.
They got too close for comfort. That's all it was. From when I
Yes.
what
He
it was one of the Haas.
He was
Nico Hulkenberg, I believe it was.
a Haas and an Alpine.
Hulkenberg, Ocon, Perez. They tried to go. They tried to go for the turn at the same real estate, and in the end, didn't work out for either of them. And that wreck, because Checo was involved, that pretty much just officially sealed the championship for Verstappen, which he did, because again he got the runners up spot in the sprint race behind Piastri with second place, which again on a Saturday wins the championship. Officially wins the championship. Now, who's to blame for that particular crash? Well, let me ask you that, because looking back at it, thinking back on it, it was a racing incident, in my humble opinion. But you say the same thing, or do you say who's at fault?
Well, one, why is Perez fighting with Haas and Alpine? But I think I want to put the more blame on Ocon.
I'm sure Ocon, back on it, if I'm not mistaken, Ocon was on the outside line heading into the corner. I know Perez was in the middle, though. Was he in the middle? I'm pretty sure he was in the middle. Perez was. You're looking up the footage right now on YouTube, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Needed something to drink down my system because my throat was starting to get dry after speaking.
So yeah, Perez, he was on the outside while the Haas was in the middle, and the Alpine was on the inside.
Okay, because Perez had damage on his left side pod, did he not?
Yes.
I figured. So it was on the outside line there.
Okay, so yeah, no, I would now looking at the footage again. Yeah, it would be more like a racing incident because
So you agree with me?
just like the actual race, there was nowhere for Hulkenberg to go because he got sandwiched. Perez, he actually broke a little later, but he turned where his rear axle contact with the front wing, but also then he collided with Ocon in the mix. So yeah, that's pretty much like a racing incident for me. Yeah, there was nowhere for Hulkenberg to go, and of course Perez was not happy.
Well, it was basically 3 birds out in 1 stone.
Yep.
Like someone threw a stone, targeted 3, they got all 3. That's how I see it. That's probably the worst analogy, but still, 3 birds out in 1 stone after someone threw that 1 stone. And that, again, one moment sealed the championship officially for Max Verstappen, which, guess who won in Texas?
Max.
You surprised?
No.
You remember who finished second
It was Norris.
and third?
Sainz.
You have racing reference up, don't you?
Yep.
I have to say, same here. Fernando retired under tray problems. And Max and Lando were the only 2 that led. Max had the most laps of 26 compared to Lando's count of 21. Yuki Tsunoda with the fastest lap of the race, by the way. In an Alpha
And
who
and
finished
also
8th, by the way. Yuki Tsunoda. 8th place finish for the Japanese driver.
so so the official result, of course, it's Lando and Sainz. Originally, it was actually Hamilton and Leclerc, but they got both disqualified because of the plank. So, if people don't know, I think this was debuted in around 95 or 96, that the plank is an indicator. I guess this probably was the evolution after Senna, that it's a way for the FIA to regulate that there has to be not too much wear on that plank under the floor. If they are under a certain amount, that they are disqualified, and this hasn't really happened. It was, I guess, since it was introduced back then.
In the mid-90s.
Yeah.
Again, you said post Senna's death.
Yes, because I think they didn't really have that, but I think that was one of the things they introduced after Senna.
Again, what wonder what he could have achieved in the Williams that year. I'd say he was a possible contender for the championship, considering Williams picked up the pieces for 94. But that's a story for another time whenever we do these recaps of certain years of Formula One.
Mm-hmm.
And by the way,
right.
Well, speaking of the Williams driver of Williams, Alex Albon and Logan Sargent finished in the points. Yes, believe it or not, Logan finished in the points with 10th. So therefore he got 1 point. Teammate Alex Albon finished ahead of him with 9th place finish and therefore 2 points in the bag. So all in all, 3 points in total for the Williams team. All in all, good.
Well, that is also that's due to the disqualification for Hamilton and Leclerc for them to move up.
That's why, because if they didn't get disqualified, Logan would have no points scored in his rookie season. Had Hamilton and Leclerc never got disqualified in the first place. And Albon, too.
Well, of course, Albon, he's been somewhat consistent in the points when he has a decent car. but this was like a big deal for Sargent to get a point in his rookie season.
Huge deal. Especially
And
this is home
also,
race too. Home territory.
yes,
Home
yes. Well,
country.
and also for Austin, Mr. Shuey came back after his
AKA
recovery.
Daniel Ricciardo.
Yes.
Well, except there was
but
no Shuey.
no, but it wasn't the best result. Probably because
He was still
either
getting his feet wet.
probably that, but also maybe the car setup was still maybe wasn't to his liking. It could be a number of things, but he ended up finishing 15th.
After sticking
While his teammate Sonoda, he managed to finish 8th. So I'm gonna
And fastest lap.
assume that it was right. So I'm gonna probably assume
Somehow.
the setup and strategy that didn't work in his favor for his comeback.
It could be a combination of both, actually. And the factoring that this was his first race back in a couple months, too. To recap the podium, Max Verstappen, Lando Norris, Carlos Sainz. Originally, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, but again, they got disqualified after a plank infringement. Next, we have round 19 located in Mexico. Checo's home race, but Checo did not finish. He finished dead last in his home race after he made a or tried to make a heroic maneuver to take the lead, which did not work out, and crashes out. And
he did.
That led him into the bottom of the race.
Yeah, Perez didn't finish at all. He DNF'd. So he
After
didn't
completing
finish.
one lap.
He was out on the first turn.
First corner, first lap.
Yep, and he was
trying
out.
to make a heroic move, and it failed. Failed attempt.
Yeah.
Who hit him again? Was it his teammate Verstappen or someone else?
No, it's definitely someone else. I want to say Leclerc. I think it was one of the Ferraris.
I thought
it was one of the Ferraris.
I think it's been a couple months since I've last seen I've seen it live, so I vaguely remember who hit him, but I do remember when he was hit, he got air, like his rear tires went off the ground, went back to earth with a bang, and that's what damaged his car. Therefore, had to park up and retire. This one though exceeded over 2 hours, just over 2 hours, 2 hours and 2 minutes.
Yeah, so Perez, he did have the contact with Leclerc.
So it was
he went a little airborne. So, but that also damaged his hopes of being on the podium in a split second,
which was unfortunate. Which a lot of people were anticipating Checo to finish in the points, let alone on the podium, and let alone the race win, which that wasn't possible with Max Verstappen, the level he was on.
Well, we don't know how this race was going to play out if he didn't crash out. He took a risk, and of course, it did not reward him.
And it failed.
Yes, it did.
But who got the fastest lap?
Max?
Lewis Hamilton.
Oh, okay.
Second place for him. And Charles Leclerc basically got what was taken away from them in the previous race in Texas. They got their podiums back.
Right.
Third in this Mexican Grand Prix. Carlos Sainz fourth, and Lando Norris rounding out the top 5. 12 laps by Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen to, I'm sure no one's surprised, like the most laps. 59 out of 71.
It was a better result for Ricciardo. He finished 7th
in the
ahead
points.
of Piastri. Yes,
ahead of his fellow Aussie, Oscar, as you said. 1, 2, 3, 5 drivers retired. As we mentioned before, Checo was one of them. It hurts for
Yep,
him the most because
and
this was his home Grand Prix. Kevin Magnussen was another
yep,
one who also crashed out at that fast, sweeping left, right, left, right section of the course. It's the course
Mhm.
before you finishing up the second sector of the lap, before you hit the third sector. That's where we crashed. Kevin Magnussen did.
Mhm.
Fernando Alonso and
And
Stroll both did not finish the race because Fernando had damage to his car, which led him to park up and retire, presuming that the damage was terminal. I forget what happened. Don't know if it was in a wreck or not. But Lance crashed out. No surprise. And Logan Sargent, unfortunately, also retired again. But that's due
Mhm.
because of a fuel pump problem. Next, the Brazilian Grand Prix,
Brazil,
which guess who won?
Max.
You surprised?
Kind of annoyed at this point.
It's cliche. It's cliche, isn't it?
Yeah,
Guess who got the fastest lap, though?
was it Max?
Lando Norris
Oh, right.
gets second place.
And of course, came second. And guess who came back on the podium?
Fernando Alonso,
The Lord of the Eyebrows.
which, as Josh Ravel dubs him, which, funny enough, Brazil 2023. Fernando finishes on the podium with third. 10 years previously, in the same event, Fernando finishes third on the podium, but in Ferrari colors. 10 more years previously, 2003. Fernando Alonso again finishes third. Even though he was considered the podium finisher, he did not make the podium because he crashed out. He crashed out in the final lap.
Mhm.
That 2003 Brazilian Grand Prix was insane. Very insane. But like you know I'm getting what I'm getting at with what I just said, right?
Yes.
He would get on the podium in third place 10 years apart. 2003, third place. 2013, third place. 2023, third place. Again, all in the same event, but with different teams. 2003, he was with Renault. 2013, he was with Ferrari. And as we know, last year, 2023, he was with Aston Martin and still is with Aston Martin. Fourth place was Sergio Perez. Fifth place, would you believe it, Lance Stroll. That's your top five. Lewis Hamilton finishes eighth. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 retirements, two of which had a hydraulics problem. Valtteri Bottas in the Alfa Romeo, and Charles Leclerc in his Ferrari, who didn't even start the race. Hydraulics problem
Nope.
on the formation lap regarding Charles Leclerc. That's why he didn't make it to the grid. Well, he was on the formation lap, but again, on the formation lap, the hydraulic system malfunctioned and he spun off. And I was already out of the race before it even begun. And Charles Leclerc said it best in on his radio. Why is he so unlucky? Which that's a question that I'm asking you. Why is Leclerc so unlucky?
I might get hate for this, but it's true. But he's in Ferrari, so the reliability comes and goes when it happens, and also the strategy. But this time, the reliability tends to always happen, and this comes at the worst time. He didn't even manage to start the Grand Prix.
Damn grid. That's even more.
Oh, he got to the grid, but not.
You know what I mean? He didn't even start.
Yeah.
George Russell had an engine problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so too did Guan Yu Zhou. Kevin Magnussen and Alex Albon crashed on the opening lap.
That was Yeah.
Which recalling back at that particular crash, again, racing incident. Albon had nowhere to go and was just sandwiched and was involved in was just an innocent victim. That's it.
Yeah, usually at the start, they usually consider it a racing incident.
Well, almost all of the lap one incidents.
Mm-hmm.
I say almost all of them because there are some that got people talking even to this day.
Mm-hmm.
Silverstone 2021. Anyone? Silverstone 2021. Does that ring a bell?
Yes.
When Hamilton and Verstappen came to blows at Cops. Man,
Yes.
I remember that very vividly. I watched it live as it happened. I'm sure you did too.
Yes, I did.
We both did. I can imagine. I can't imagine what your reaction was at that time when that happened.
Well, like I said, I probably will get hate, but I was excited that Hamilton managed to get through and Max crashed out.
Yet Hamilton got the penalty for that. Yet, so he came from
Only 10
to
seconds.
the back and then back to the front, extended the gap after he got his lead back, despite the 10-second penalty, time penalty that is. He still won.
Yep. And of course, Red Bull was not happy.
Of course, because, well, on the opening lap, because of that alone.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure Christian Horner was going back and forth with not only Toto, but also Michael Massey simultaneously as they were doing all throughout the year. I feel like scolding children. I tell you, 2021 was something else.
Well, that's why the rules changed. That now no team principal has direct communications with the
FIA.
race director. Now it has to go through like multiple people to even get to the race director, which I think that's, I guess, somewhat decent. But I guess, that might be a slow response depending on what the message is.
Exactly. So you're saying we should go back to how it used to be, where the team principals would actually communicate with the race director.
Well, I mean,
It creates more drama, doesn't it?
well, that's why we have Drive to Survive. So
Yes. Which I'm waiting for season 6. I'm already caught up with all the 5 seasons. Waiting for season 6.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. Yeah, I mean, like, I guess bring that type back, but in a way it can be a little well, like, I think probably someone had this idea, like they can communicate to the race director, or was it no, the race director can have direct contact with them, but they can't have it to the race director. But I think that's how it is now.
It is that's exactly the case.
Right.
Things change and how things can change in just a span of a few years, right? Next up, we have the penultimate round in the championship, Las Vegas. Now, this one, we touched on this in the pilot. We gotta go over practice first. For those that don't know or have yet or did not see the pilot,
started.
What?
Because this is where it all started. Because this F1, this is the first time in years they have came back to Vegas.
The first time since 1982.
So if people don't know that the original Vegas was the Caesar Grand Prix.
Caesar's Palace.
The original track was actually in a parking lot.
Nobody showed up.
Yeah, you heard me right. It was in a parking lot. It was a parking lot.
No cap.
Yeah.
It was in a park. Nobody showed up. Well, yeah, there was some, but not a lot.
Well, I mean, again, F1 wasn't as big back
as
then.
it is now.
In the US, so to speak. It was big in Europe, of course. Not so much
Here, in
even
the
though they
States.
did have multiple other tracks,
Long
like
Beach,
Watkins Glen,
Watkins Glen, even though
Long
Watkins Glen was on
Beach.
the calendar back then. Long Beach was
Well,
one. Detroit was another one. Dallas, even though Dallas will be on the calendar a few years later in '84, but still, you get my point.
right. They had multiple tracks in the US, but still was not
As
that
big
popular.
as it was across
As
the
long
pond in
as
Europe.
yeah, Europe they were of course that's why like in Italy the Tifosi they are like the biggest fans there, and they don't
in
care
Brazil,
who's
and
on
in
the podium.
Brazil.
Right. They have no favoritism of drivers. They just care about the sport.
And they just care about the
Um,
play.
right. So yes, in many years, F1 is back in Vegas.
Many years.
This time, yes,
This time on the strip.
is on the strip of Las Vegas.
At night.
So yes, but also there was also another problem with this race. Well,
If you see the manhole,
at this time it was in November, so F1 missed one part. It was going to be cold, and you know how the cold and F1 cars don't really mix, and brand new tarmac. Yeah.
as we saw in Turkey 2020, especially. So I know with the last part, yes, definitely that.
So yeah, they had almost like a triple threat. That it was cold, new track. Even the lower categories did not run on this, so they can't already
get data from
lay down any rubber. That but also they didn't lay any rubber on it for F1 to even try to get grip. So and also the residents of Vegas did not like this at all. If you saw on social media, even when they're building it, they kind of build a bridge across the track. They actually, they put like a banner or something to block the look of, try to get like a free look if you don't have a pass or you didn't. And residents did not like this at all, so they I guess in a way they try to make this event fail.
Do you think the event failed?
Well, I didn't have any expectations on this track since it's new, so we didn't know what was going to happen. So what happened in practice 1?
We talked about it in the pilot. For those that don't know, Carlos Sainz hit that manhole.
Literally, like 20 minutes into the session?
I'm sorry, what?
Was it like 20 minutes into the session? But no, it was like 10 minutes into the session, and
that
had to be red flagged
right.
Because, well, if you don't know how F1 cars work, it's like an upside down plane, and the high pressure it's actually low pressure on the bottom. It creates like a vacuum. So anything, especially like manhole covers, they're usually supposed to be spot welded down. This one wasn't. And it came up and destroyed Carlos Sainz's floor and battery. But what happened when that happened?
Yeah.
One, it was red flag, so the rest of the session was not going to continue. But not only that Carlos Sainz had to replace the floor and battery, he also got penalized, which makes no sense because that was not his fault. It was out of his control.
Exactly
he
what
could
I'm
not
saying.
control. So practice 1 was red flagged and not going to continue. So I think they ran a little of practice 2. Probably because,
Barely.
well, it kind of got delayed because they were, inspecting all the other manhole covers.
I seen a lot of people saying that this was going to be a relatively bad Grand Prix weekend. More so in the race itself.
Well, like I said, the residents didn't like how the event was even before it started. So
Some
they
of the
were
residents
trying
that couldn't even
to.
afford to purchase the tickets had their houses or hotel rooms boarded up.
Well, like I said, that bridge that goes past the track, you can't even stand there. You had to keep moving. There's like multiple security that's going to tell you have to keep moving if you don't have a ticket, so you can't get a free look unless you are like at a specific place, like there's like an escalator. People are like there just trying to get a glimpse.
To see the for those who can't afford it.
Yep.
Would you do the same thing?
Yeah.
No.
Because
No. Would you walk back and forth over and over again on the same bridge just to get a glance?
oh no, I would just be at that one place that that one fence, and just try to get a look. That's the only place. I'm not going to walk back and forth.
To avoid getting into trouble. I can understand that.
Yeah, well, I mean, also, you know, they didn't sell enough tickets. They also had to reduce the price multiple times,
And
almost
that
like
also
half.
And that also didn't fare well. You've mentioned this in the pilot too. When Carlos Sainz at the manhole in the session, practice session was red flag, they weren't going to resume
Mhm.
because of that moment.
Yes.
And again, it was stupid that they gave him a grid penalty because of him replacing the battery and the floor. Again, he had no choice
Yes.
because it was not in his control.
I mean, if he had to, I guess. I mean, it's in the rules that yes, I guess when they had to replace a component, I guess a battery. Because I don't even know if they have a certain limit on how many batteries. I know they have power units and ICUs. They have a limit, but not. I guess maybe it's the same for batteries. I guess, but he got penalized for just replacing the battery. I guess he went over the limit, so yeah, I got penalized.
Again, it was stupid to do that because again, it wasn't
Again,
his
yeah,
fault. Speaking of
right.
Carlos Sainz in this Las Vegas Grand Prix, he finished sixth despite that, starting 12th on the grid. He qualified second, if I'm not mistaken, and during the qualifying hour, but again, had that grid penalty and started 12th as a result, as a 10 place grid penalty. But yet, again, came back to finish sixth, still getting a full chunk of points, or a good chunk of a point. Good chunk of points is what I'm trying to say. A good point stay nonetheless, with 8 points in the bag. His teammate Charles Leclerc, who led 13 laps, 18 points. As far as who got the fastest lap, that honor goes to the McLaren of Oscar Piastri, who finishes 10th place, just behind Fernando. Logan Sargent with his best qualifying start of 6th, but in the end finishes in 16th. Yuki Tsunoda, Nico Hulkenberg, and Lando Norris did not finish. Lando, I know for a fact, spun off and crashed. I think he had a tire problem on the second lap, if I'm not mistaken. As far as what happened to Nico Hulkenberg and Yuki Tsunoda, I forget what happened. That faded out of my memory because I haven't seen footage of this race because I watched it live and I haven't seen footage of the race again since it was live. So I can't say for sure what happened between Nico Hulkenberg and Yuki Tsunoda. As far as who won the race, take a while.
Max.
Yes. And his teammate Checo finishing third. So the podium finishers, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, Sergio Perez. In the end, Red Bull won 3, which Red Bull had their special fire suits. Max had a Elvis Presley style-like fire suit. I don't know what Perez was, but I know for a fact Max Verstappen had a Elvis Presley-like fire suit. Funny, he didn't like the Grand Prix weekend at first, but immediately changed his mind when he won it after leading for 29 laps, basically leading the most laps in the 50-lap event. Checo led the third most laps, leading just 8 out front, and again, Leclerc leading 13, the second most. Now, the start of the race, though, I want to get into that real quick. Do you remember what happened at the start phase?
Yes.
I think Fernando and Valtteri was involved in it, if I'm not mistaken.
Well, I do know, yeah, Alonso. He went a little too deep on the inside, and of course, this is still a new track, so the grip not really there.
Which it wasn't, especially since it was a clean slate for everybody. Clean slate for everybody. And not only was Fernando involved in that turn 1 scrimmage, Valtteri as well. Pretty sure he also slipped off.
Well, I think he was just on the outside, but he had a little touch, just a little after Alonso.
Alonso finished ninth after starting ninth, and as far as Valtteri is concerned, he started 7th on the grid and finishes 17th out of the points range. Again, Piastri with the fastest lap of the race finishes in the top 10 in 10th. And instead of getting that extra point, instead of getting 1 point, he got that extra point for getting the fastest lap, so therefore he got 2 points in total after the race, because again, fastest lap of the race. We all thought, I thought Charles Leclerc was going to get the race win, but Max Verstappen, he was in a league of his own, got him in the final laps and got the dub. His 18th win of the season up to this point. 18 wins. 21 races in 2023. 18 race wins. Now, this brings us to the season finale. Oh, real quick, before I say this, I said Fernando finished 9th, right? In the Las Vegas Grand Prix?
Yes.
Lance finished 5th after starting 19th. You shocked by that, aren't you?
Yeah, but, as always, it could have been just some luck, just because the first lap collision. Or mishap.
Again, this comes back to what I said hours ago with Logan Sargent. His seat was saved for this year because of his best qualifying spot of 6th in Las Vegas. Because at one point, considering how much bad luck he was getting with the countless crashes and incidents and retirements, he was on the verge of losing his seat for 2024. But again, he was able to get his act together and keep his head in the game, and like I've said moments ago, 6th fastest after the qualifying hour, which I'm pretty sure that alone saved his seat, along with the points finish in Texas. But still, Vegas was the main reason, at least in my humble opinion, that saved Logan's seat. This brings us to the last race of 2023, which is Abu Dhabi. But before we get into that race, though, the Las Vegas Grand Prix was the first race back, like you said, the first race back for F1 in over 40 years. What were your thoughts on that race? The Las Vegas Grand Prix from this year? Not this year. This couple months ago?
I mean, it was actually pretty decent.
Despite
everyone. Yeah, it's despite all the negativity that everyone wanted it to fail. I think it was it was pretty exciting. But it definitely had exciting moments, and definitely was little beyond my expectations for the Grand Prix. Because like I said, I didn't have like that much expectation because it's like brand new, so you don't know how it's going to be. I mean, you know, like other tracks, once, you know, if someone's in the lead, you know, sometimes the rest can be somewhat boring. I guess at times it kind of was, but there were more, you know, they showed more battles this time.
In Vegas, speaking.
Yes. Yes.
And Hamilton, by the way, I don't know if this is true or not, but I remember hearing about it and reading about it. Apparently, Hamilton did the most overtakes in this race in particular.
I think I heard that too.
15 of them, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds about right.
I'm telling you, dude. Telling you, Hamilton, the best at overtaking. Started 10th
Especially
and finishes 7th.
Especially like
Ahead of his teammate
like
who
low
finishes
grip
8th. Who started 3rd, George Russell
Especially-
speaking.
Yeah, especially Hamilton. You know, when it's like the low grip tracks, especially like rain, he's pretty good at overtakes.
Turkey 2020. Especially
Yeah,
that.
well, that's. I mean that was rain and new tarmac, so that was a double threat there.
But it wasn't a threat because he still pulled through and won regardless. Let alone
But,
lost the 7th championship. And again, Hamilton with 7th place again. This with 15 overtakes in this one race alone. P7 for Lewis Hamilton after starting 10th on the grid. His teammate George Russell, 3rd place on the grid, finishes behind him in 8th. Fernando 9th, and Oscar in 10th, again with the fastest lap of the race. Now we come to the last race of the season, race 22 of 22, Abu Dhabi. Guess who won?
Max.
And guess who got the fastest lap?
Max.
And guess who led the most laps?
Max.
You're annoyed by this, aren't you?
Just a little.
You guess what? Last race of the season, you won't be hearing me saying that no more. Well, at least until we get to 2022. But 2023, that's it. Race 22 of 22. Max Verstappen won the pole, led the most laps, 52 of 58. Fastest lap of the race, and to no one's surprise, wins it. 19 race wins now. 19 out of 22. Let that sink in real quick. 19 out of 22 races. You gotta admit, that's an incredible ratio. 22 races. Max wins 19 of them. Again, you gotta admit, mind-boggling to comprehend. As far as the other podium finishers is concerned, you've got Charles Leclerc, who started 2nd and finishes 2nd after leading 1 lap. Another driver who led 1 lap was Yuki Tsunoda, and got the driver of the day too. I remember he got driver of the day, Yuki Tsunoda, at the end of this race.
Yes.
Despite leading 1 lap, but he finished 8th after starting 6th. But as far as who got the last podium spot, that honor goes to George Russell. Only his 2nd podium of 2023. And Lewis, who had 6 podiums in 2023, he caps off the year with 9th after starting in 11th. Got those final 2 points in the bag. To close off the year, Lance Stroll finishes behind him in 10th place and got the point, finishing ahead of Daniel Ricciardo. Logan Sargent with 16th place after starting last. He could have had a better qualifying spot had he not had those times deleted in qualifying because of track limits.
Mm-hmm.
2 drivers finished a lap down, those drivers being Valtteri Bottas and Kevin Magnussen. Only driver who did not finish was Carlos Sainz in the Ferrari. And Oscar Piastri, the rookie, finishes in 6th place after starting 3rd, and considering he finished best of the rest of the rookies, well, Sargent was really the only rookie in the field that ran full time. And obviously, Oscar beats Logan by a country mile in the points. Oscar, your rookie of the year of 2023, who finishes behind his teammate Lando Norris. Now, this was when Fernando and Lewis almost collided. You remember when they come into the heavy braking zone?
Yes.
The turn, what was it? 1, 2, 3. Coming into turn 5, Fernando and Lewis
Yes.
almost made contact.
Mm-hmm.
Was it deliberate on Fernando's part, or you beg to differ?
I mean, I guess in a way you can say it's deliberate, or it was I guess a cheeky way. I guess you could say it's like a cheeky way. I wouldn't say more deliberate.
Because Lewis got on the radio and said that he almost brake tested him. I recall hearing that. But then again, like I've said, your podium, Max Verstappen, Charles Leclerc, George Russell. And again, with Russell, this was his second podium of the whole season. His first coming in the Spanish Grand Prix. Max with the fastest lap of the race, and the final standings look like this. Max Verstappen obviously wins the championship by default by 290 points. That's the difference between himself and second place Perez in the standings. Lewis with third, Charles Leclerc with fourth, Lando with fifth, Lando and Fernando with fifth because they are equal on points with 205 in total. Carlos Sainz with seventh, George Russell is eighth, Oscar Piastri is ninth, Lance Stroll 10th in the standings, and funny enough, finishes 10th in the last phase of 2023. Pierre Gasly with 11th, Esteban Ocon is 12th, Alex Albon 13th, Yuki Tsunoda 14th, Valtteri Bottas 15th, Nico Hulkenberg P16, Daniel Ricciardo finishing ahead of Guan Yu Zhou in 17th. But then again, they both scored equal points with 6. Kevin Magnussen with 19th in the standings with 3 points. Liam Lawson with 2 points finishes 20th. And Logan Sargent with 21st, getting 1 point. Nick De Vries failed to score. As far as the Constructors' Championship is concerned, Red Bull win it by default. Mercedes second, Ferrari third, McLaren fourth, Aston Martin fifth, Alpine sixth, Williams is seventh, AlphaTauri finishes eighth. The last time they'll be under the AlphaTauri name, because apparently there's going to be a name change for this year, for 2024 onwards, until further notice. Alfa Romeo with 9th place in the standings in the Constructors, and in last, Haas. As far as who got the most fastest laps, Dave, just take a wild guess.
Max.
Yes. 9 fastest laps recorded. Saudi was 1, Miami is another, Spain, Austria, Silverstone, Hungary, Japan, Qatar, and Abu Dhabi. I think Checo also got a few fastest laps here and there, and those fastest laps were in Australia, Canada, and that's it. As far as Checo was concerned, Russell got a fastest lap at Azerbaijan. Lewis got fastest lap here and there. Singapore, Belgium, Mexico, to name a few. And there you have it. Of course, we have other drivers that got fastest lap, like Guan Yu Zhou, Oscar Piastri, Yuki Tsunoda. Those are the others that got fastest lap in this past 2023 Formula One World Championship season. And with that being said, since we got all the races down and dusted, that pretty much concludes the recap. So with that being said, Dave, what are your final... how do you review the 2023 F1 season as a whole for calling these races? You're glad it's over, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much like Lewis and Charles, they're glad that this season's over because they don't have to drive those cars anymore.
Regarding for Ferrari, the Ferrari SF23 and in the case of Mercedes, the Mercedes W14. Yeah, it was a fast car, but it wasn't nowhere near the level of the Red Bull RB19. Telling you, dude, Adrian Newey and his work at Red Bull is just something else.
Well, also because when they introduced the ground effect, that's
In 2022,
in Adrian Newey's powerhouse because he was there when the original ground effect was in fact with with Lotus. They did the first ground effect.
in the late 70s.
Yeah.
That was when Colin Chapman was still running the team in the 70s with Lotus.
Well, Colin Chapman was doing everything. He was the team principal. He was the engineer. He did it all.
He was basically the Adrian Newey before Adrian Newey, but twice as big.
Yes.
And twice as more. He had more work than what Adrian.
Yes.
Adrian, technical director, and designs the cars. Colin Chapman, he did that too, but he was more than that. Team principal and the engineer.
And aerodynamicist.
And that too. Again,
because he's the one who had the idea to put the front and rear wing because he understood, or he pretty much tried to do an upside down airplane.
That's basically what he did in the 70s.
Yes.
Even before then, you remember in the 60s, he was the first to invent the monocoque. Did you know about that?
Say that again?
He was the first to design the monocoque design.
Oh, the monocoque. Yes. Yes.
He was the first to do so.
Yes.
A vast majority of what F1 has today, you can thank Colin Chapman for that.
Yes.
Like the OG Lotus team, by the way. The OG Lotus team.
Yeah, and also I said this on the pilot that he was the first one to change the position of the engine from front to rear.
Which Enzo Ferrari had a saying about that the engine, or the horse, is supposed to pull the car and not push it. Yet, when you put the horse at the back and pushes the car, yeah, even with that factor, you can still prove to be successful. As Jim Clark found out, as Jochen Rindt found out. Rest in peace to both of them, by the way. Emerson Fittipaldi as well, because he won the championship with Lotus in 72. Jim Clark in 63, 1965. Jochen Rindt in 1970. I think Denny Holm as well in 1967, if he was running for Lotus in that year. Denny Holm too?
I believe so.
I do know Denny Holm won the championship in 67. I think he ran Lotus, though. I could be wrong when I say that. So don't quote me on that because I could be wrong. But I do know Denny Holm won the 67 championship.
Yes.
I think it was with Lotus. I could be wrong when I say that, though. The OG Lotus team, by the way, because you remember when Lotus Renault was a thing in the early 2010s decade. That's not the same Lotus team that ran in the 60s.
Well, at the time,
70s. It's
at the time,
team, by the way.
Well, at a time there was actually two Lotuses
in the 2010s.
Yeah, there was the.
There was the front. There was the running midfield Lotus team, and there was the back team.
Well, there was the Lotus Renault, and there was just a Lotus.
Yes,
that
Lotus, which would then become Caterham.
Well, Caterham, yes.
And that was that lasted from 2010 to 2014, but 2010 and 11 it was known as Lotus, and then mid 2011 and 2012 it was known as Caterham until it shut down in 14. Apparently, they had a wind tunnel and a car setup for 2015, but they shut down.
Yes.
Lucia or Manoa back in 2016, same thing when the 2017 season was starting up. They shut down.
Yes.
Unfortunate, but if you don't have the funding and if you don't have the results, then you're not going to get far. In the case of Kedahim and Manoa, well, they were back market teams, so that's what happened. Arrows, same thing. Even though they were in midfield here and there, but they were more often than not back markers. And apparently they purposely failed to qualify for the French Grand Prix in 2002 because of financial problems, because it was that bad. And they ceased operations either during the 2002 season or after the 2002 season. I'm pretty sure it was midway through the 2002 season as it was still going on when Ferrari and Michael Schumacher were winning everything and when Ferrari were on top. Because, yeah, Ferrari were in a different ball game back then. Nowadays, it's a 180 where they're trying to get themselves back up there, but every time they keep hitting bumps in the road, and that just hinders their progress. And it makes you wonder, when will they get back on top? When will they get the Constructors' Championship again for the first time since 2008? And when, more importantly, when will they get that first Drivers' Championship since Kimi Räikkönen in 2007? Yeah, it's been that long. We all thought Charles Leclerc was going to do it. We all thought Sebastian Vettel was going to do it. Well, technically Massa did win it, but for 15 seconds in 2008. Fernando, 2010 and 2012. Sorry to bring it up to you. And that's about all I can think of. 2008, 10, 12. What was another one? 17, 18, 22. 6 times Ferrari had a shot at the championship, but they can't. But every time they faltered. And when they faltered, that's the end of that. Either McLaren picked up the pieces, in the case of Lewis Hamilton in 2008, or Red Bull picked up the pieces, in the case of Sebastian Vettel in the early 2010s, or Mercedes picking up the pieces, in the case of Lewis Hamilton, as I'm sure you know. Which, all these seasons that I'm mentioning right now, we will cover up in this podcast series, in these recap series, so to say, regarding F1, as we just did with 2023. When will those come about? I don't know. Only time will tell. It depends on what we've got going on. And considering that this podcast has been going on for what feels like hours, that's where we will pretty much, since especially considering the fact that we've covered up every single round of the 2023 Formula One season up to this point, this is where we will end the podcast, especially considering how long we've been recording the session. Like I've said, that pretty much concludes this episode of Turn 4 Sparks Controversy, recapping the 2023 Formula One season. And excuse my speaking and my the way how I speak. I get passionate when it comes to this stuff, as you can tell. Dave, again, got your final thoughts before I close off the session?
I just hope it. Well, we'll just see. We'll just see how the 2024 season gets underway.
And you remember we talked about in the pilot that we would do predictions of the 2024 season shortly after preseason testing.
Yes.
That
which will be in February.
Planned out. When is preseason testing, by the way?
I believe it should be. I know it's February.
So around late February, or
yeah, late February, February 21st to 23rd.
That's the whole session of preseason testing.
Yes.
21st through the 23rd.
Yeah, only a couple days.
So shortly after that, we'll get on Discord and record our predictions for the 2024 season, as far as who gets the most fastest laps and who gets fastest laps in all the races, the podium finishers, who will do well and who will not do so. It's pretty much going to be like the same format. I've seen prediction videos or results videos after the season concludes from the OGs of WTF1, also Josh Ravel. It's going to be similar to that, but in a podcast style like platform, and obviously our own takes on the 2024 season. But again, those will
Right.
be at a later time, shortly after preseason testing. Shortly after preseason testing. Again, excuse the way how I talk, but that's just the way how I am. Is complete. And then we do our predictions. The season gets underway, and then when the season is done, we come back, listen to our predictions, and see who's right, who's wrong, who gets something right, who gets something wrong. Vast majority of it's going to be wrong, at least from my part. I just know it. But we'll see. The racing gods have a plan, but we don't know what will happen. Until then, time will tell. That being said, this is Turn 4 Productions, signing off the mic. As always, and until next time and further notice, peace out, stay safe, and have a good one. Dave, if you have any final sayings, say it now before I end the recording session.
I'll just see you next time.